I don't know if you're all aware of a program called Desert Island Discs, where somebody is invited to go and talk about their life and what music that they want to take away to the desert island, and they're asked to take away and choose 8 discs. And so I kind of was thinking about a book series where I asked people to kind of reflect on which 8 ideas have been most influential in their career in psychotherapy. So what I thought I would do very briefly today is to just give you my 8 ideas. I know time is short, so I'm not going to sort of dwell on each one. But I'll start off with the first one, which is the concept of the working alliance, and that is from a man called Ed Boudin, who wrote a very seminal paper in 1979 on the working alliance. And the idea there that is that when the client and the therapist have a good enough bond between the two of them, where the goals are actually consistent, and that they share various understandings of matters to do with psychotherapy, and they are able to put into practice their tasks to help the client to achieve their goals, then effective therapy will occur. And I came across that idea around about the time it was actually published in 1979, and it sort of stuck with me. And I think it's a great concept, and it's an idea which I would put in my 8. Second one has been influenced by my training in rational emotive behavior therapy. But I think that in a way, I don't like the term beliefs the way Ellis used it. So I think about the term attitude, which is, I think, more in line with actually what Ellis meant. And for me, an understanding of what attitudes that people hold towards adversity really does help to account whether they're going to be disturbed about adversity, or whether they're going to handle that adversity in healthy ways. So I'm always looking for ways to help people to actually focus on and change their attitudes. Now, the third idea is something which I call integrated emotion theory, which has come from various different sources. But the idea is for every emotion that's associated with some kind of inference. So in anxiety, you've got the inference of threat. In depression, you've got the inference of loss or failure, and so on. So an understanding of what inferences go along with each emotion is really quite important. And also, an emotion is linked with both actions and action tendencies, and cognitions and cognitive tendencies after the fact. So I think kind of bringing all these things together, inferences, attitudes, action, and cognitive tendencies, and subsequent actions and subsequent thoughts, for me, has served as a really great framework, which I have in my head when I'm actually kind of working with the client. The fourth idea is responsibility. Now, I think kind of responsibility needs to be very sensitively handled, because it's so linked with blame and self-blame. But I think if we don't take responsibility for the bet that we are responsible for as human beings, and I think that is we're not necessarily. Sorry, can I ask people to mute their thing, because I can hear all kinds of noises.
Sorry, that's probably
okay. Great. Anyway, so
if we ask everybody to keep their computer, laptop, whatever device they're using on mute,
that'd be great.
Doing that, but if you could just be mindful of that, just so that actually we can hear what's being said. I know it's technology and we're all getting around it, but it'd be great in essence if that was just worked with. So Dave, can you bring Wendy back?
Yeah, as soon as Wendy, go for it, Wendy.
Okay, so that idea of responsibility, we're not responsible for what he's done to us, although we might unwittingly contribute to that, I don't know. But I think we are responsible for how we respond to that and how we carry that on. But having said that, it's very you have to go very carefully explaining that, because it's so much tied up, particularly today in these days, with sort of, you know, oh, so you're blaming the victim kind of thing. So you have to sort of very carefully. It's a minefield, that particular concept. The fifth concept is something which I think is also linked to responsibility in a way, and that is we do have a choice of responding. If we didn't have a choice, then I think, you know, psychotherapy would be very difficult to actually do with people. But I'm a great believer of the idea that yes, you may initially respond in a certain way, but what you can do is stand back and then see that you've got a choice between responses. And I think a lot of good psychotherapy encourages people to learn to stand back in whatever way they resonate with. It might be mindfulness, it might be something else, but helping people to stand back and to reflect kind of and understand the nature of their initial responses, but not to be, if you like, imprisoned by the nature of that response. And quite often people disturb themselves about their initial responses rather than accepting it and showing themselves compassion for having that. The sixth idea is something I call flexibility, pluralism, and idiosyncratic practice. And that is, I think, effective therapists are first and foremost authentic. And there's a concept which I kind of really have ambivalence around, and that is it's called therapist drift. Therapist drift is a negative concept where a therapist departs from an agreed protocol. I've been sort of against that whole idea.
There'll be about 15 minutes wait.
I can just ask you to mute your microphone, please, Lydia. Thank you.
Yes. So
there you go. Okay.
So so therapist drift is seen as an unfortunate departure from an agreed protocol, and I've been drifting all my life, so I want to set up a group. We call ourselves the Drifters. Our first meetings will be up on the roof, and the second one would be under the boardwalk. So I'm a great believer in therapist drift, sensible drift, and I think the idea that of being flexible while being guided by healthy principles and drawing from widely. This is why I like the idea of pluralism. So I put those ideas together: flexibility, pluralism, and idiosyncratic practice. The seventh idea is something which has really permeated my sort of training and what I've learned from people, and that is learning from what therapists do rather than from what they say they do. And so, you know, I've read and read and read, but it's only when I've seen people practice have I really learned you know, significant, you know, points of how to do psychotherapy. I've actually striven to actually do that, so I like to do demonstrations whenever I can. Which brings me to my last point, and that is being influenced by what's been done in the field of single session therapy and the importance of actually trying to provide a prompt response to people at the point of need rather than the point of availability. And for those of you who don't know the field of single session therapy, I'd certainly encourage you to have a look at it, because it's actually quite exciting, and because I think there is a lot that you can do in a single session. And also, that field has also improved the work that I do of a more ongoing nature. Just because you're practicing single session therapy doesn't mean that you're not going to be working with people in other forms of service delivery. Now, I hope that I'm not going to ever be asked to take away just one idea, but I think if I was going to just take one idea along my desert island, I think it would probably be the last single session therapy. So I'll be on my desert island doing therapy with myself, but only for a single session. Thank you very much.
Well, I'll find you, Windy. In between finding you and finding somebody else, I will find people. I'll find that desert island and join you very beautifully. Thank you so much, Windy. That is so appreciated. From somebody that supported us, encouraged us, being there for us, and truth be told, really touches my heart. And I know certainly David's really felt the support from Windy, haven't you?
Yeah.
So thank you, Windy. You're an absolute diamond as a man and a therapist. And we can't
Thank you.
thank you enough for all the things that you've given to us in just your support and kindness. Did you want to say something else, Des? It looked like you did. Did you want to say anything else, Windy?
No, I'm good. Thank you very much for your support over the last year, and I wish you and David well going forward.
Thank
Thank
you
you
very much. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much, Windy. Now,
Okay, so I don't know what you guys feel about that. I mean, let's just kind of sit with it for a second, I suppose. And what are your initial thoughts just hearing from Windy?
I personally like the idea that you know what Windy said about drifting. You know, how can you be authentic if you don't drift? How can we be authentic if we are stuck in a model? So it feels like he just named what it is that we've got to, the balance we've got to try and find, I guess, between authenticity and kind of boundaried. But I always think of the boundaries being very flexible, you know, and that allows us to drift around within our kind of boundaries. The way he named it and the way he said it was really nice for me.
Yeah,
it's a lovely analogy, isn't it? Drifting. Because if you think about it, it gives you the fluidity to work with your feelings, with your thoughts, depending on the situation, the context, the relationships. And personally speaking, I think that's probably what I've done all my life without much thought before I became a therapist. I think being a therapist allowed me to drift in a slightly easier way of being, simply because of my self-awareness. But a great analogy of drifting, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
I think that drifting is very much linked in with authenticity and actually following what the client is bringing to us. I think, as Geoff was saying, not kind of shoving people into a box and insisting that they apply themselves to our way of thinking, but being flexible and authentic enough to understand that in actual fact, sometimes if you address things head on, then the defences are going to be very strong. Sometimes it's about following and just going through, maybe coming in through the back door and finding out if that's a difference. Being flexible enough and not being so dogmatic as to go, we are doing CBT and that is it. Yeah,
great. Absolutely agree, Ross. Yeah.
And as much as Windy is very much CBT, I find him to be incredibly person-centred. There's a real man in there that is compassionate, thoughtful, caring, helpful. You really couldn't ask for a more incredible man. And the help that he's given to us will touch me until, and I know it'll touch me until the day that I die. Because not many people are willing to say, if you like, in relation to his own standing as a therapist, you know, I'll help you for no other reason apart from the kindness of my own heart. Now, he didn't say that. He just helped.
it is.
But it was from the kindness of his heart. And it's a rare individual that you meet that is that kind for no other reason apart from their own personality and thoughts. And for that, personally, I'm forever grateful to Windy. So I think Windy's actually, has he disappeared and gone?
Are you still there, Windy?
I think he's gone.
Yeah. No. Oh, just through. Yeah. No. I know he was.
Recording. He'll find out what I think, but I think he knows what I think. So, David, I know you were going to bring something else in, weren't you?
Yeah, I just wanted to say a thank you to Windy and myself. Windy is the first academic who reviewed the work that I'd done on the psychological hive, and he was the first academic to see that in delivery and encourage me to actually get that into publication and make that available to a wider audience. So someone that was told at 16 that they would never write more than 4 sides of A4, that was a massive coup for me. So I will be forever grateful for that. Not going to knock the fact that it took me 22 years to do the research for the psychological hive, but to be able to have that from someone of his standing is absolutely phenomenal. So, before we go any further, I would like us to do our first raffle draw. So the way we're going to do this to try and make sure that we keep it completely blind, everything else, we're going to ask one person to pick a line and one person to pick a letter. Okay? So I'm just going to go across the top and I'm just going to pick random people. So if at first I could ask Leslie, can you pick a line 1 through to line 7?
Line 1 through to line 7. 6.
Line 6, okay. And if we could then come down to Leslie Ann, can you pick a letter between A and J?
Okay, Leslie Ann, I'll take this one because I think we got mixed up there.
Yeah. Why are you drinking water?
I don't know whether everybody else is on. Okay, I'm going to go 6.
No, Leslie Marsh just picked line 6.
No, I'm sure that was Leslie Ann.
No?
Help us out here. Who's picked what?
Leslie Ann.
Just picked line 6.
Okay, I'll go 4.
Yeah, I did 6.
I'll go 4.
Leslie Ann did. Leslie Ann picked 6. Right, Leslie Marsh, number from 1 to A to J.
4.
4. A to J.
Oh,
G.
G. Golf. Golf.
G.
Go.
So we've got line 6 and G. That is ticket 1405.
Right, so that's the first one.
1405 is the first raffle ticket out. So who's got 1405? I don't think he's there. That is Nino.
Nino. Right, Nino is supposed to be joining us. He'll find out about his raffle prize later. We're going to do this for everybody, so just to be aware. And this is the very first time we've done anything this big online. So have a laugh at us and feel free, because at the end of this, we're going to be sitting behind here going, my God, we managed to succeed with so many people in the room. So thank you. There'll be a few drinks at the end of this tonight, I can tell you. Right, okay. Who's our next speaker?
Next speaker is Dan from PSA.
Now, Dan's on mute at the moment. I'm not sure if he's...
There you go.
Yeah. Dan? Hi, Dan.
Hello there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Thank you for having me. Okay, great. So would you like me to do my standard spiel about the Accredited Registers Program and what that means for everyone?
Pretty much.
Okay.
So, for everyone that's watching, those that have been following
Ted.
last year, we have been doing everything
Good boy.
and
Don't you dare bite.
for PSA
Hold on,
registration.
hold on. Can we make sure that anybody that is on here has their microphone on mute? Jackie, have you got yours on mute? Ingrid? It's just to make sure that we all hear Dan. Thank you. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Dan, go for it.
Okay, great. So my name is Dan. I work for the Professional Standards Authority, which hopefully no one has ever heard of before. But what we do is our main statutory role. We're an independent body. We report to Parliament, though, is that we report on the statutory healthcare regulators, like the General Medical Council for doctors, Nursing and Midwifery Council for nurses, midwives, and so on. So we're the oversight of those bodies who set the standards for their own occupations and professions. About 10 years ago, the government at the time, the coalition government of the time, decided that no more occupations were going to be regulated. That meant no more protection of title, no more protection of function for any health and care occupations. As an alternative, what it recommended was a form of voluntary assessment and voluntary assurance for occupations that could and were effectively already setting their own standards and controlling the workforce to an extent. So what we have is the PSA developing the Accredited Registers Program, which allows professional bodies such as ASA, such as BACP, who you know, the British Acupuncture Council for acupuncturists, the Public Health Register for public health specialists, any occupation in this country which does not have a regulated status, which is 99% of all the jobs in health and care. There's only about 50 protected titles. There's 2,000 to 2 million unprotected titles out there. And you'd be surprised how many jobs out there you've never heard of until they came past my desk. So what we do is any organisation that runs a register of practitioners can apply to us for accreditation. And what we're looking for is that they operate a public register that the public can check to see that someone is there, to see that they're trained, they follow a code of conduct, they do CPD, they're insured, and if there's a complaint, it will be looked at properly, hopefully resolved very quickly to the satisfaction of everyone. But in the worst case scenario, they'll be removed from that register and their name will be forever on that list, or 5 years at least, of saying this person is bad because of X, Y, and Z. And someone trying to find out about their practitioner will be able to Google that person's name and see Bob Jones removed from the register for heinous abuse of public trust, theft, robbery, abuse, whatever you have, and that will protect the public. And effectively, there's not that much difference in what that means between voluntary occupations and regulated professions. If you're a regulated osteopath and you're booted off the register for something heinous, you'll be back in business tomorrow as an unregulated spine manipulationist or something like that. There's very few actual protected practices or functions in the country. Like you can't offer teeth whitening, you can't offer I don't know, things, hair transplants, for example, has to be done by a registered surgeon. So effectively the controls are by employers, by who they'll hire. Obviously they're only going to hire a registered doctor, not some guy off the street, or B, the public, who can choose to see someone who has had 1 day's training, set up shop in their house down the road, or they belong to a reputable professional body, which is, I presume, what the ASA is in the process of demonstrating to us in due course, and we hope that they will apply and gain our accreditation. We look for a well-run register, effective complaints processes, good education standards, and a commitment and a demonstrated ability to protect the public. So that's what we're looking for, and any organisation can apply to us that runs the register, demonstrates to meet the standards, pays our fees, and once accredited, the register and its website and all its materials, and as well as practitioners, will be able to use our quality mark. Now, what we want is for as many organisations to gain our accreditation as possible, and as many practitioners to use the mark as possible, so that the public identifies the mark and knows that whether they want counselling or acupuncture or foot treatments or hair treatments or anything really, that if they see the mark, then they know that they're going to be safely treated, and if something goes wrong, it'll be addressed. So what I do is I assess the applications, I work with organisations applying to bring them up to speed, and basically help organisations get to the point where they can be accredited, which they're then awarded that. It's valid for a year, it's renewed for on an annual basis, and as part of that, we'll help the organisation to promote itself, hopefully to gain new connections, both within the accredited registers community, to sort of gain status and recognition for what they've achieved, and hopefully open doors, for example, to be recognised by the Department of Health and say in counselling, NHS trusts generally have had the BACP on the UKCP on their books for the last 20 years. And their HR departments will have an old manual and will just say that we'll hire from these two organisations, and we don't see any reason to change our processes. So we're in the business of lobbying, using what connections we have and the force of all of the registers together to lobby, to be shown as a mass force to say, everyone who meets our standards, that meets the specific education requirements required for a particular role, whether it's basic counselling to a high level required for extreme, well, you'll be more aware of the levels that I will, but extreme trauma cases or what have you, that need that level of education. But as long as you've got that level of education required for the role, the employer will be guaranteed that you belong to a register which has checked those qualifications, has checked that you do relevant CPD, has checked that you're not on any sort of blacklist for doing something wrong, and that you are willing to be held accountable and regularly tested. So that's what we are trying to bring to all the registers, and effectively bring greater protection to the public, who will be able to find people they can trust more easily, as opposed to someone that's on a one-day course or has been removed from a register and kept on going. So that's what we're really trying to do here, and hoping to work with everyone here in the near future. And can I answer any questions about what I do, repeat anything that didn't make sense or anything at all, really?
Fabulous. Thanks for that, Dan. Before I go to questions, we would just like to kind of let everybody know that APA in the last 10 days have made that declaration of intent with the PSA. So as Dan says, there is a process to go through. We have already completed our own operational review of the 11 standards. We have already gone through the self-assessment of the 38 points of reference that Dan and his team have put together over the last, it is now 10 years, isn't it, Dan?
Yes, we've been running since, I think we opened up shop for the Accredited Registers Program in the end of 2012. So just over 8 years now, I think. We're getting towards 8 years.
Okay, so for all of the work that APA has done in building our framework, when we sat down with those 38 points of assessment, and we found that the processes, everything else, was so already aligned with what the PSA are asking for, it was a surprise even to us at just how tight everything was. So that declaration of intent was put in, as I say, about 10 days ago. You can confirm that on the PSA website. They do have that listing that shows you who is in the process of going through the application. And thankfully, because APA is obviously top of the alphabet, we're top of that list as well. So you don't have to go searching for too far to see that we're already on there.
But I do want to say, on a personal note, Dan is a really, really helpful individual. No matter what your issue is with any organisation, if they're attached to the PSA, And I use credit where credit's due quite a lot, because when it applies to somebody that knows their staff, is helpful, is kind, compassionate and thoughtful and informative, I recommend them. So I say to anybody out there, if you've got a complaint about an organisation that's on the PSA, sorry Dan, but Dan, you know, that's the man you go to. And he is amazing, and I'm sure you can get a sense of his personality on screen even here. He's lovely, he's thoughtful, and he's helped us so much, which for a brand new organisation, which is effectively we're the underdogs of the therapy world, which there's a little bit of me that's very proud of that. Dan has been incredibly supportive in telling us what to do, thinking about that, who to connect with, da 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 da. So Dan, a special thank you from both of us, because you really have been that helpful to us. Thank you very much, and for being here today and supporting us. As you can see, we're ticking off one of the 38 point whatevers, just to reflect our collaboration with everybody here. So that one, Dan, you're witness to. That one nailed to a T.
So has anybody got any questions for Dan around the PSA, the processes, contact, anything else?
Yeah, Dan, can I just ask about, I train therapists as well as practicing as a therapist, but we are a private, or a charity. We're not a college, we're not an academic college, and so we don't award a degree. So I'm just looking at how you interpret and how you assess the education level of qualifications.
Well, I should just highlight we ourselves are not experts in any particular area. I am very, very lay in every area, and I and the team basically learns about things as we go. What we're looking for is for an organisation to demonstrate that its qualifications are acceptable. Obviously, the easiest way is to have off-qual certification, or having been through one of the independent certifying bodies that award based on procedural sorts of things. We have a couple of registers who also operate their own training programs as sort of sister businesses to the register itself. And they are the clinical experts for their practice. So they have set out the requirements for the occupation. However, they've had external certification by some of the assessment bodies out there, which will check procedure, which will check not the administration, I guess, but the governance of it. So what we're looking for is for an organisation to demonstrate how their qualifications are sound, how they're relevant, how they enable you to do the role for which you're being taught, and then we'll put it out there to the wider public, stakeholders, to say everyone else in the industry who is a cutthroat rival with you, is their program sound? What are the holes in it? Why would you like to see them removed from the market? And then we'll take that and we'll give it to you and ask you to respond to that. And it's with that sort of dialogue from all sources which allows us to gain evidence. We might take it out for expert third-party review if necessary, but generally we'll find there's enough people out there with opinions and experience who can comment on something fairly, and we'll test that from all sides. So that helps us to make the assessment, even though we're not experts ourselves. So that's kind of how we do it.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Thanks, Dan.
Fab. Has anybody else got a question for Dan? Going once? Going twice?
Going 3 times.
Okay, so
we have his email address. If you do need to speak to him,
then give us a shout. We can pass it on. Now, Dan, before you head out, I know you've got family plans for this evening, so I'm exceedingly grateful for you sparing some time for the group today. But I want you to hear the first part of our international news before you head off.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is the first part of 2 pieces of news that we've had come through in the last week. Okay? And it has a direct impact on each and every one of our members. So, are you ready?
If there was a drum, we'd be banging it in here.
Okay, so APA has been approached by a recently retired federal court judge from the USA who has seen the work that APA has been doing.
And loves David's. Absolutely loves David's.
Who wouldn't? But the Honourable Judge Mary Bullock has offered to secure or work towards international funding to take APA program.
We need everybody on mute.
There we go.
Sorry. Can you hear that, Roz?
All there? Okay, cool. So, the Honourable Mary Elizabeth Bullock has offered to secure or work towards securing funding in the US to take APA's programs through the Community Learning Hive and APA's teachings, our structure, the way we work, the way our membership organisation works, and deliver those into the US. This is, as you can imagine, a phenomenal step forward.
Which means we will need trainers, which means we will need more members, which will mean we can provide more work to the therapeutic community, which means that everything that you don't see us do is now coming to fruition. We work our socks off behind the scenes to connect with people, develop relationships, encourage people to know who we are, to know them, which is just as important.
But
to
also,
have this on the table is beyond the pale phenomenal.
It shows as well that the directory that we're building, and I'm saying this specifically for Dan, the directory that we are building is now being seen internationally in a way that we never imagined possible when we put the first business plans together for APA. But it is all because of the feedback and the interaction that we get from each and every one of our members. So as grateful as we are to Mary for her support and her drive to get that funding to get APA into the US, and I know Asa is going to talk about APA getting into the US later on, but to have that come through from someone who is a renowned civil rights campaigner, judge, and moreover, Mary has offered and is facilitating a Zoom meeting in the next few weeks between Siobhan and myself and Dr. Vince Filetti. Now there are some of you
recognising that name.
Some of you will know who Vince Filetti is. Vince Filetti, for those that aren't aware, was the doctor that did the research and coined the phrase adverse childhood experiences.
Roz,
I think Roz has passed out.
This is obviously phenomenal for us, but APA was never about myself and David. APA is about changing the whole of the therapeutic systems to make it better for clients. Our whole ethos is client-led. This is about the clients getting the best of the best, and when you know, the people that know us know what the best of the best means. It isn't 28 degrees, it's self-awareness plus your training plus your qualification. Because we know that the personality of a therapist plus their training is what makes good client work work. We know that. You know, I say that based on a private practice that's been successful. I know so many of you that have exactly the same ethos as ourselves. So bear in mind, this is a phenomenal achievement for our members, for trainers. My head can't even think further than the end of my nose at the moment with this one, but it is massive for every member that we've got, and everybody attached to APA. We want you to be involved in this in one way, shape or form. So know it's as much for you as it is for the clients, and hang on to that, because we've got other news. But we're going to wait, aren't we? Yeah, we're going to wait for the other bit of news.
The big news we're going to share just before Asa does his talk later on. But
that means you have to pop back in, Roz.
You're going to have to come back. But I promise you, if you thought that was big,
yeah.
The
next bit.
The next bit goes up a notch. Okay.
Even I don't know what's happened in the last 10 days. It's like some kind of crazy thing has happened, and it's mind blowing. But I also know we need to get on to the next raffle, don't we?
Let's do the next raffle. So you can pick somebody this time.
Jay's the woman from my heart and soul from a long time ago who knows me very, very, very well. Jay, I'd like you to pick a number from in between 1 and 7.
Between 1 and 7?
Mm-hmm.
1 and 7, including?
3.
3.
Okay, so on line 3.
And I will go for Dennis. Dennis, can you pick a letter in between A and J?
Bravo. B, Bravo.
Okay,
B.
so that is ticket number
6352.
6352.
And that is 6352, 6352, 6352. Angela Day.
Hello.
Angela Day. There you are.
You received a surprise, and it's still a surprise because you haven't got it yet. But you will get it.
I am going to be emailing you a digital copy of the Psychological Hive.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Okay, and that will give you a huge insight into the building blocks that exist between the most successful companies and the most successful people in the world, and how they can be replicated both as a professional but also as an individual.
So you'll also see how the connectivity between therapists and clients ties into this beautiful ethos, Angela. And I've just clocked Angela's surname. See, myself and Angela is amazing, and it's her room that I've clocked more than anything. Leslie Mast, and we've been doing a panel of communicating and in conversation. Leslie, Angela, I don't think she wants me to acknowledge this, but she's brilliant at IT. Knows her stuff in relation to what she does, and has an amazing character. So I'm letting you know, Angela, exactly what I think out loud about you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, and congratulations. So, Dan, how does that bit of news sit with
the PSA?
The PSA. How do you feel?
Well done, you guys. I mean, again, from my entire position of ignorance, I trust that that's amazing, and so that's brilliant. I mean, again, we're as you know, very, very nuts and bolts and nitty gritty, and if that's you know, I'm sure that does translate to better care for the public with that level of endorsement and the ability to expand outwards and deliver better care. So so great, well done.
So that's 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38,
done. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Dan. Dan, if you disappear off, no worries, but we really
no worries, I should be around for a few minutes, thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate you being here and sharing our connection to you, but also recommending to anybody else in relation to any issues they may have or an application to the PSA. Dan is definitely a man. So thank you very much, Dan.
So, how are people feeling? Is everybody happy? Give me some high five, give me some thumbs. Let's see, everybody good?
Yeah.
Oh, all good. Fabulous.
Excellent.
Right, so onwards, upwards, let's keep this train rolling forward. I would like to introduce someone that means a huge amount to me, someone who's done an awful lot of work with education, a lot of work in community development, and someone who, unfortunately, we weren't able to give as much support to in their last project as we would have liked. But she knows that we love her. Ladies and gentlemen, Glenda D. Roberts.
Glenda, you're on mute at the moment. There you go.
You know what? Thank you for that introduction. I had no idea that you were talking about me. I was thinking, oh, who's this going to be?
Yes,
well,
thank you, Glenda. Considering we've known you less than 8 months, you become a firm friend. Not just a peer, a firm friend. Glenda hobbled off out of the country in the nicest possible way, and I threatened her with finding her in a bush, waiting for her with her shotgun so I could get in the front door. Glenda is somebody to know. Her training organisation is so ethical, so on the ball. She teaches students the power of excellent therapy. So I know a lot of you know me, and by knowing you and knowing me, you'll know the standards of Glenda. So personally speaking, I highly recommend any student to be sent to Glenda's training environment. She is a lovely, lovely, lovely woman, as well as damn smart and funny.
No pressure on the presentation.
well, thank you. Thank you so much for that. I'm actually sitting in my field in France at the moment, and I've got my car here, as you can see. I'm at my caravan here, and I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me very well? Yeah.
It's coming through, yes.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, it's really great to be in cyberspace with you guys, and you know, I feel really privileged to be called your friend, actually. And I set off on a journey many years ago because I wanted to make a difference. And I know that this is quite cliche. I know that lots of people in our business have always wanted to come into this business to make a difference, but I nearly was aborted as a fetus, and I then survived that, and then I came fighting out again when my mum was just about to give birth, and the midwife turned around and said to my mum, she's not ready to come out yet. Well, I was ready to come out into the world, and I'm here now, and I've been thinking about what to talk about, but I never really like to plan anything. And for me, when I started to think about my achievements and not just what I've done in the world, but the thousands and thousands of people, not just in the UK, but across the whole world really, that I've managed to help, I've kind of thought to myself, surely that's not me, but it has been. And I think for me, I've always had this fearless streak in myself, and I've always overcome all difficulties, and at such a young age being told that you're stupid, you're worthless, you're dyslexic, you're this, you're that. I always knew that I had a good memory, and I knew that I had a very creative brain. And it was when I was very young, I wanted to do something purposeful for me and purposeful for the world. So I set off on a mission to do that. And when I think about the things that I've done, I've been involved in serious trauma and working with the brain, the psychological aspects of the brain, the physical impact of the brain, and the emotional impact of the brain for quite a long time. That spans back about 30 years. And I've worked with some phenomenal solicitors in the UK that have supported my growth and helped me to work with some really traumatized clients or patients, as we call them. And I've had the opportunity to set up so many different variations of work that's been really helpful for people. Some of those I'll tell you about. So when I worked for an organisation when I was studying many years ago called AKA Case Management, my boss then, Angela Kerr, said, Glenda, why don't you try and set something up that's going to keep your motivation going? So what I did was, I said, well, we need to be able to take brain injured clients abroad for respite trips. So how about I put something up in your company? And she said, Glenda, pilot it. So I did my research. All of the stuff that you think you need to do, I did. Quite good at doing all that sort of stuff. And I set up a part of my then boss's organisation to involve traumatized clients to be able to travel to most countries in the world. And that was a huge success. And in the end, my boss, Angela Kerr, at that point set up a part of her company called Heads Up Holiday that I developed, and it went really, really well. So it was back in 2004 that I decided that I was going to start studying counselling and psychotherapy, which I did. Sorry, back in 1998, I beg your pardon. And I did that. But I was always keen to kind of show people that you can do anything that you set your mind to, because anything is possible. And I need you to really feel that anything is possible, because actually it is, really, it is. So for me, when I decided that I was going to set up a counselling psychotherapy centre and a brain injury trauma centre back in 2008, I did it. And because I'd had a lot of contact in the trauma world, I decided that I was going to set up trauma, serious trauma, support rehabilitation. But I need a team, see? So I started to develop my own training program, PSA, and then we started to train people from Headway. We started to have solicitors come to our training to understand physiology and the anatomy of the brain and how they can impart that in their work. And whilst I was doing that, you see, I decided that I was going to continue to set up the respite, which became very, very successful. And you see, the respite I've already done for Angela, so it just felt natural to do it with my own company. And I think I've probably worked in most countries of the world with my respite and my trauma rehabilitation work. And that enabled me to work with many different cultures. It's enabled me to understand different cultures and knowledge and expertise, which I've imparted in my practice where I am today. So all of that knowledge and expertise of traveling with my work, I bring back to my practice now, and so many counsellors and psychotherapists benefit from all of that expertise. So it was back in 2011 that my practice needed a kind of uplift, because I wasn't doing so much stuff already, but that's me. I can manage lots of different things at the same time, and that's just how my brain works. So basically, what happened was we set up a placement agency back in 2011, and all of a sudden it started to do really, really well. But I'm one for OCD, because I am OCD. I'm one for organising structure and planning in advance. And I'm one for also taking risks, calculated risks, but some risks that you just need to be able to do. And not the risks that you feel actually, this is going to be detrimental to my work. You really do need to have an awareness and to develop your own self-awareness, and not just your own self-awareness, but that of where you're at as well. which enables you to then move graciously forward into whatever you need to do in life, and that's been very much for me. So the placement agency that I set up in 2011 was doing fantastically well. We started to work with many universities and colleges, and of course developing our strategies and developing relationships, and honest relationships is something that is really important. If you look after yourself and you look after people and you look after the relationships that you come into business with, the rest really does work in your advantage. And that's how it's been for me from day one. You look after people and they'll look after you. And you have to be totally honest. And you have to recognise your strengths. You have to be able to recognise your weaknesses. And you also have to be able to say, actually, put your hand up, I need help. There's nothing wrong with saying that you need help. And I ask for help when I need it. So that's another key aspect to being successful. So it was during to fast forward a bit, and it was during 2016 that my middle daughter, who was off flying aeroplanes, she was only 16 at the time, and she started flying aeroplanes, and I've got 3 children, by the way, so this kept me really busy. Well, a young adult. But it was in 2016 that my middle daughter became quite insular, and she became quite solid like me, but she wasn't speaking, and she wasn't able to kind of manage herself very well. And this was because she lost 4 friends in our community of Suffolk, where my practice is based, to suicide. And I was really, really shocked and really, really surprised and left very, very disheartened in the fact that these, young people know what I'm doing. Why didn't they come to ask for help? So it was then that I decided that I was going to go on foot, because I'm very proactive and I do a lot of the research and everything else myself. If I want something done, I'll ask for help. But it was at that point that I decided to go around to most businesses in Suffolk and ask if they've had any kind of experience with families or staff members of suicide. And it was 16 during 2016, strangely enough. So I came back to my practice and I said to my team, we need to do something about helping people in the community, because why are the young people ages between the ages of 18 and 23 taking their lives? This is just ridiculous. So it was then I said to my team, we've got a lovely practice where we run the brain injury psychotherapy, the training, the placement agency, the respite. We do have capacity to set up a group in the community. So it was going to be free to people in the community to help people to come to us free of charge and get the help they need. So we opened up our doors on a Saturday once every month, and before long we started to have 5, 6, 7, 10, 20, 30, 40 people come to our group. And before long we got so busy that we needed to have extra space. Because if you remember, all of those businesses that I'm running from my centre began to get very, very busy. So we received a letter from the House of Commons saying, we commend you and your team, Glenda, for all of the efforts and everything that you're doing in our community. Your work isn't going unnoticed, so thank you for that. Well, it's nice to have that, but at the end of the day, we're doing the work. And as you can imagine, there's lots of strategies and there's lots of stuff that you need to put in place to safeguard and manage risk, which we're really good at doing. Coming from a trauma field, it's these types of documentation that we already have in place. So we're pretty okay when it comes to managing risk anyway. We're pretty good. So I said to 5 of my team members at that point that we've got to find our own building. So off we went, finding a building in Suffolk, and we found a phenomenal building. And I said to the team, this is the building that we need. So as we walked in there, I said, you know, like sometimes when you can just see something before your eyes just appear as if it was magic. Well, this is what happened back in 2016, where I found this building with my team, and I said, this is going to be a counselling cafe. And we're going to divide the shop into a reception area where people can come in from the street and get the help they need. And they looked at me and they said, brilliant, this is what we're going to do. So basically, I needed to take this idea to my membership body, and I'm an accredited psychotherapist, and I'm part of the BACP, and I'm also a media spokesperson. I've been a media spokesperson for the BACP since 2017. So I joined an engagement meeting with the president that was there of the BACP, with the chair of the BACP, with the policy makers and all the rest of them, which, you know, are part of my team, to present this idea. Because if you can imagine opening up a counselling cafe and having a service shop on 3 floors, because this building was phenomenal, and coming up with a new concept, which is something that I've always been able to do. There's no blocks in my life. If I think that something is needed, I'll find ways to make these things happen. So when I presented this idea to everybody there at the BACP, it was, you know, you've got our blessing, really. So I came back and it opened up, but it didn't just open up. It took time to refurbish this new concept and time to, you know, come up with all of the eventualities of boundaries, of ethical dilemmas, of everything that you can think of that would impact in a negative way, to put into our practice so that it would not impact in a negative way, that it would work to the benefit to help the people. So if you can imagine, when we started the group, we became very, very busy, but everybody from the group and everybody from the placement that was set up, my team and I, were sent over to this new 3-story building. It was absolutely phenomenal. And if I describe to you how we spent time making, this wasn't all in my head, but making this new concept to counselling come to life, you only had to see it to believe it. And we had a visit from the BACP. We were featured in the UKCP Therapist Psychological Magazine as a new concept of counselling. Because why? Because we were helping not 20, 30, 40, 50, but we started to help tens of hundreds and thousands of people with this new concept of counselling. And it worked. And it worked because it was needed, and it was being run by people who knew how to make this work. So not just me, my team, and not just a motivated team, but an excellent team who wanted and just felt that they needed to help people in our community. But we weren't just helping people in our community. People were traveling all over the country. But we didn't just set up an affordable counselling service with Just Talk 2019, but it was actually called Just Talk Campaign back in the day, because we then got charitable status, guys, and charitable status came within a year of setting this new strategy up. They gave us it within a year, and that was phenomenal for us because it was a bona fide charity, and we were just doing so well. And I'd had some really, really good contacts in Baker District Council that gave us this building in a tenancy at will, which meant that we had the building for as long as we could have it for, until we got big funding money come through so that we could afford the rent, and that's where we needed to get to. But unfortunately for us, we lost our building, and it was because somebody came in from the streets and said, yep, Baker Council, we can pay £20,000 rent for the building. And we had, I think, 2 weeks to find the money to pay the rent, but actually we couldn't do it. And we lost our building, the idea, because when we lost the building, I did say to the rest of the trustees that I just felt that all of our hard work we hadn't done this for nothing. It was the fact that we'd helped all of these thousands of people, but I just felt a bit disillusioned that we'd lost our building. So I took a month out with the rest of the trustees, and then I thought of rebranding everything back into an affordable counselling service. And that's where Just Talk 2019, Affordable Counselling Service, which is the sister service of Exploring Youth Counselling. So I have two companies. One is Exploring Youth Counselling, and the sister company, obviously, the two meet where we have Just Talk 2019. And that's a placement agency that we have that also makes film, awareness films actually. We made our first awareness film back in November 2019, and that was called Dying to Be Famous, which was a brilliant film, and I teamed up with an actress from EastEnders who became the director of our awareness film, and we made a phenomenal inspirational film, which is actually being used in schools, colleges as a tool to help those to understand the effects of trawling and social media, especially on young people. So a rebrand, a film, you know, everything is going really well for us. We have at least 30 now trainee placement counsellors. We have 5 brilliant supervisors. We have also our about 20 to 25 own CPD training that we write. And we have the most amazing dedicated team of supportive staff to help us, that help the phenomenal amounts of people that come into our affordable service that get the help they need. We don't just have that, we have some amazing businesses that help us to continue with our service, because remember, this is an affordable service that we set up that means that people can see, clients can see a trainee counsellor for nothing, or for what they can afford, which is £5 sometimes, or nothing, like I said. And if we do an assessment with a client and we feel that actually they're not suitable to see a trainee counsellor, then of course we have about 6 qualified team members who then can go on to see a client that maybe had some extreme difficulties that our trainees are not yet able to work with. So it's a really good model that we have set up, and we now have Just Talk Productions, which means that we, like I said, set up our own production company to make short awareness films that again are giving the therapeutic world a voice. So our aim is to make films that are hard-hitting, that we can work with different aspects to do with people's lives on film. So because I made a short awareness film, one of the newest members of our team, well, she's got her own film organisation called DT Films, and her name's Donna Taylor. She saw my film and said, great, this is just brilliant. You just up my street, Glenda. Why don't we make some films together? And I thankfully hit it off so well with Donna Taylor. Like Bonnie was saying earlier, you have to be authentic, you have to be real, you have to be trustworthy, you have to be open-minded, hardworking, and you have to be brutally caring and professional to succeed in any business, let alone in the therapeutic world. So when I met Donna Taylor from DT Film, I said, praise the Lord. You know, it's all coming in and it's all just falling into place. And of course, all of the other businesses that I've mentioned to you are still running distinctly. They're still doing so well, still helping lots and lots of people. But you see, they're running. And why are they running? They're running because we're helping people. and they're running well because we have the best team. And when trainee counsellors finish minimum 2 years of studying with us, usually they're offered a job with us as well. And that's what we do. We offer people who have trained with us on their placements an opportunity to work with us. And they usually take that up. So they're all working with us. And this is how the team's just growing and growing and growing. But just getting back to the films with Donna Taylor, when we decided to make our own films and join with DT Films to make short awareness, hard-hitting films in the therapeutic realm, we made Just Talk with DT Films, and that's a company that we've set up. And it's not just any old company, it's a social enterprise, which means we're going to be offering young people in the community the opportunity to have placements with us, and also to have packages where they can have therapy and they can learn about creative aspects of our work and film work as well. So we have all of this, guys. It's a phenomenal opportunity, and I hope that you're all thinking about the multi-facets of your practice and how you don't just have to be a therapist. You can develop your areas of expertise in wherever you feel comfortable. But don't forget, it's not about feeling secure and most comfortable. It's about stepping out of your comfort zone and pushing the boundaries so that you can develop new concepts for counselling, like we did with the Counselling Cafe. You can develop new ideas like the rehabilitation and counselling that we offer, specialised trauma rehabilitation, you know, because we learn about and we teach people about the brain. And I would encourage you all to do that, you know, if you're not crazy like me, but if you don't just want to be stuck in a field, you know, I'm always enthralled by meeting new people and you know, you just begin to develop so many ideas when you tread this path of being fearless. And remember when I told you earlier about my background is, well, I told you my entrance to the world, but my background is a dysfunctional, very, very dysfunctional family. Being brought up on a tough council estate in South East London, in Deptford. And I just wanted to make a difference. And so I kept my head down on the council estate, and I didn't do well at school because I was told you're stupid, you're worthless, you're this, you're that. But I knew, like I said to you, I had a good memory. And this is what I've done, guys. I've put my memory, I've challenged my brain and myself and my motivation and my passion into all the areas that are possible, into the imaginable, you know. But if you imagine whatever you want to achieve and think of your life as there being no blocks, you can achieve it. But the minute you start to think, oh, well, I can't do this because of this or because of that or because of this is exactly what happens. You go into a downward spiral and you don't attract people in your life then who are going to help you to do that, you know. But if you keep your sights high and your motivation high, and you see, you know, in your mind's eye what you want to see, no blocks, you can achieve boundless amounts of goodness. And that's exactly what I've achieved in my life. And I think, wow, you know, when I look at my life and I think, wow, you know, I've done this for me, but I've done it because I can, and I'm proud of myself, and I'm not ashamed to say, actually, all this stuff that I do, all this stuff that I'm involved in, it makes me feel good. I'm aligned with my true purpose because it happens, because I can make it happen. And when you make things happen, as if by magic, you attract like-minded people into your life. And that's all what happens. Attract meets attraction. But remember, the minute you do something deceitful or harmful or hurtful, or you're even thinking that way, that's exactly what you attract. So try to imagine what it would be like to have the best life. Not focus on, you know, well, I can't do this because of this and this and this and this. Because when you go down that spiral, like I said, that's what you attract. But think of your life as being magical, and you can achieve exactly what you want because there are no blocks. It becomes magical, and that's testament to, you know, where I've come from, and my life is imaginable. You know, it's the best life. You know, I have my family supporting everything that I've done. I have good health. I align my staff with the best support that they can have. You know, they're not afraid to tell me the truth about anything, and me them. But it's done in a way that serves, you know, people well. You know, and we have this recognition in our practice of we can achieve together. And there's opportunities for everybody in my organisation to do this. It's not that, you know, you need to have this skill or that skill. You know, we engage with people and we offer them the opportunity. And I'll always prod and encourage people to take a step forward. And my staff will tell you that. But, you know, I'm never one to say, oh, well, you know, maybe you should do that. Or maybe, you know, who am I to say that?
And I'm sure, I don't know, if in amongst that, Glenda, you could see the smiles and the recognition of other people that were identifying with your words and your language. And I think anybody here can now understand why our attachment is with Glenda, because her passion, her belief, her desire is so incredibly strong. You know, as an empath, I can feel it coming off me in waves. And if there's one person that has come into our lives very recently as a female therapist, and that's aligned with APA in every single way, Glenda's somebody to connect with, somebody to know, somebody to have by your side, somebody that will help you. You know, and if I'm going to say anything, I think she's played her abilities down in relation to the films that she's done. If you go off and actually see the films, Dying to Be Famous, if you actually look at it, it's a phenomenal example to young teenagers to show the damage that can be done through bullying on social media, but also to recognise that there is help out there. That's Glenda's message, helping people, educating them, making them aware. And if that isn't aligned with APA, I don't know what is. So now you all know why we do think the world of her, because you can't help not think the world of her. She's brilliant. Thank you very, very, very much, Glenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. And happy birthday.
Thank you. Right, so we're on to picking the next raffle ticket.
Yep, let's get that done. You did it better than me last time, so you can go with it.
Okay, Nettie. Nettie? Yeah, can you pick a number in between 1 and 7, please?
2.
2.
Okay,
Okay, and Helen, can you pick a letter in between A and J, inclusive?
A.
A.
Okay, so we have 1816.
1816, 1816, 1816, 1816, 1816. Where's 1816?
Here we go.
816. Marion Minson. Okay, I don't think Marion's here, so we will put a tick by her name and let her know what she's getting later.
But everyone else,
can I borrow that?
She'll be getting a gift pack. Shh! Don't tell her yet.
There you go. Right. Okay, who's our next speaker, David?
Okay, so we've heard from this gentleman previously. He was one of the birthday special episodes, or he was the feature of one of the birthday episode specials that went out earlier today. He is the founder of Psychreg. He is the one, the only.
Dennis.
Over to you, sir.
Dennis, before you start, I'm going to ask you to I'm just going to ask everybody to hear this, because I do think it's important, because I want people to understand our background with Dennis. Dennis contacted us last year. He'd organised an international event over in Borneo. He invited myself and David to speak in the University of Sabah. Now, if you were at that event, how Dennis organised that is beyond the pale phenomenal. We ended up spending 3 weeks out there. I know the group on Facebook saw what we were up to regularly, but honest to God, what Dennis created across the other side of the world was mind-blowing. I also got the privilege of seeing private orangutans in the wild, all by myself. But sticking on the subject of Dennis and his capability, honestly, if you saw what he created in the University of Sabah, with the Minister of Education, other individuals there that were absolutely mind-blowingly intelligent, he's a man you need to speak to if you want to actually navigate your way through blogging, through education, to understanding. A phenomenal psychotherapist. On that note, Dennis, because I know you and I know you very well, I'm going to run to the Louvre. You carry on, and I'll be back in a minute, okay?
Thank you for that introduction, but I'm afraid I won't be as passionate speaker as Glenda. It was a very rousing and a very passionate sharing of what you do. But I'll be talking with about a slightly different topic. I've been invited by Dave a few days ago to talk about diversity of thoughts, or cognitive diversity, and I suppose on a first glance, that topic is not really relevant to what you're doing, and but I'll just share to you my background. As what Siobhan has said, I created a website called Psychreg, so basically that's what I do. I don't have a similar background with you, but I suppose this is kind of parallel to what you do, because yeah, it's also psychology, it's also about mental health, it's also well-being, but I'm not a practitioner. But in the kind of job that I chose to do, because I publish different things, I try to diversify the content that I produce, and also the people that I interview on YouTube, because I'm also a YouTuber. I interview different peoples within psychology and mental health. And in fact, I've interviewed Siobhan and Dave a few months ago. So I suppose what I'm trying to convey here is that whatever you do, whether you're a psychologist, a counselor, a psychotherapist, it's important to understand the value of diversity. And this is not the kind of diversity talk that you would usually hear, because I'm not also in favor of what I would say forced diversity. And what do I mean by forced diversity is that we always just try to, and I have to be very careful with this, because I don't want to invalidate other people's experiences. But what I want to say is that we don't have to diversify things on the basis of immutable characteristics such as ethnicity, such as gender. And that's the thing that I want to focus on. Diversity is important, but more than anything else, I think it should be about diversity of thought, diversity of experience. A good example of a diverse experience would be probably from Glenda. She has very rich experience, and I think as a psychotherapist and as a counselor, that's something that we could learn from. And also diversity of talents, diversity of skills. And I think what we have to realize is that, that there are many different approaches in psychotherapy. You can focus on psychodynamic, you can focus on behavioral, you could focus on cognitive, on humanistic and holistic and so on. But that's an example of the kind of diversity that we should be focusing on. And the reason why I'm talking about this is I'm a member of the British Psychological Society, and in February, I wrote a letter to the editor, because every month they send us a magazine called The Psychologist. So every member of the British Psychological Society, we receive that magazine. And for one of their issues, they focus on the topic of decolonizing psychology. And all of the articles on the magazine was all about being diverse in terms of gender, being diverse in terms of ethnicity, and it's all about social justice. And I told them I could easily capitalize on the kind of narrative that you're promoting on the magazine, but I think as a body, as a psychological body, you have to promote diversity of thought more than forced diversity. And I think this is what I want to communicate to Dave and Siobhan as a body, as a psychotherapeutic body, that you can see that diversity is important, but we don't have to be cliched about diversity. It's not all about gender. It's not all about ethnicity, because at the first glance, you would think that, especially if your background is not into psychology or psychotherapy, you would think that this field is quite unilateral, but it isn't. It's about, it's about different views. It's about, representing, the rich tapestry of life. And so I think if whatever we do, we have to encourage different opinions. I've interviewed a few people on my channel, and I do get lots of negative comments on some of people that I've interviewed. They said that, why are you giving platform to bigotry and hatred? And I told them, I'm not giving people on the basis of their opinion, but I'm giving people a platform because they need to be heard. And as a society, I think we should be more tolerant of different views. So I won't go on about it because I've already emphasized my point, but I think that's something important for us to realize, especially yourself as psychotherapist, that you have to be tolerant of other people's views. You have to listen to their experiences. That's it.
Dennis, I want to say something to you, because we had that talk the other day. I've lost him. Where is he? Where is he?
I'm here.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
He's already run off stage. He's gone into the corner over there. Yes.
We had a phenomenal conversation with Dennis the other day. And both myself and Dennis are immigrants. We've come into this country. And Dennis said to me something that really, really stuck with me, and I'm sharing it with you, Dennis, because he was talking about his history of not having running water in his home when he was growing up, and coming to a country like the UK and actually feeling gratitude and appreciation that he was in an environment where, if you like, he could have running water. And I'm really, really identified with that perception of appreciation and gratitude for the things that we have got, rather than the focus on what we haven't got. And Dennis, I just want to say that really struck such a strong chord with me.
Yeah, I heard about it for quite a while after the conversation.
And I've actually said it to people, Dennis. I've actually said, if we look at the gratitude of what we didn't have to what we have got, what we can achieve, it's an incredibly positive way to appreciate a different environment, a different background, but where you come from, but where you can end up. So thank you from me, because that really, really struck a chord with me, Dennis, and it was very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Very welcome, anytime at all.
One of the things that, before kind of we move on from Dennis, one of the things that I wanted to kind of touch on is, a lot of people will have heard me say over the last year, APA is inclusive, APA is open, and we are one of the few organisations who, when we put up our equality and diversity policy, most people were shocked, because it is so far out of the let's tick this box, let's make sure we know we've got everybody from all of these boxes. We've taken those boxes away. We treat absolutely everybody as a human being, and we ask that they treat everybody else within the organisation as a human being. Beyond that, we're now working on breaches of ethical and professional conduct. We're not breaching on anything to do with somebody's race, gender, creed, religion, because they are all man-made facets to control those other organisations and those other groups of people. And APA does not believe in controlling somebody based on the things that have been set up to keep us divided. APA has always said that we believe that if we are going to be a choir of professionals in this sector, then we need to have every kind of voice and every kind of tone. We cannot go down the road of listening to the loudest voice and then following that. That's not a choir, that's a dictator. And that is not what APA is about. Dennis, I want to thank you for all of your contributions to...
Margaret would like to say something. Margaret, come in.
Yes, hello again. Well, I would like to say that I've been lucky to write for Psychreg and be interviewed as well by Dennis. And really, he's an amazing man, and it's been really, really nice working with him and sending him articles. And I really like his platform and his way of thinking. So I would highly recommend him. That's it.
Fabulous. And that really does kind of underline everything that we've experienced with Dennis too. And the work that you do is so valuable. Please know that you have our full support as you move forward as well with Psychreg and the international work. And again, the international work's going to come up later on.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to promote an article, promote their writing, Dennis is the man to go to, because we highly recommend him. I mean, in all honesty, we wouldn't have been in Borneo last year if Dennis hadn't recognised the message that we wanted to get across. And if you'd have been in Borneo with us and you saw the impact of students that do not have therapy as part of mandatory courses, when I stood up and shared how my self-awareness helped me get through cancer, and I was explaining to students that trauma was not their fault. And those words are very powerful words. We know that when we hear that. Even I underestimated the audience's response to the words of, "It's not my fault." And even I struggled at the end of both of our performances when I was surrounded by a ton of students hugging me, crying, and actually saying the impact of hearing that my history wasn't my fault. I've never heard that. That these were individuals going into learning to be therapists, learning to be counsellors, yet not encouraged to do their own therapy. And to see those females crying and hugging me, even I was blown away. I didn't know what to do. I was standing there going, what do I do here? What I did was hug them back. But there was a lot of hugging going on. And if it wasn't for Dennis giving us that opportunity to go across to Borneo and experience that,
it was phenomenal.
You know, you can't really say thank you enough for somebody sharing that opportunity and that time and that space to allow us to do that. So thank you, Dennis, because you're somebody that's always supported myself and David like everybody else here. And as per usual, we will support you back in reciprocation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so we're on to the next ticket, aren't we?
Yeah, come on, let's get another. What are we going to do? Starter pack this time.
Right, Ross, pick a letter in between, a number in between 1 and 7, Ross.
Well, it's got to be 7, isn't it?
You're going to go with 7?
Yeah.
Elaine, a letter in between A and J.
G.
G. So G, 7, 6, 5, 8, 2. 6,
My
5, 8,
beautiful
2.
assistant, Oh, she's gone.
6582. Where is 6582? 6582.
We're page 6582. 6582.
Leslie Marsh.
Leslie Marsh.
This one's, well, she was there.
So Leslie Marsh will get the starter pack, which outlines everything from business canvases right up to living will.
I am here, I am, honestly. I am. I'm just on satellite delay.
No worries, Leslie.
Thank you so much.
Right, who we got
So
next?
that will be sent out to you by the end of the weekend. So I would like to introduce a gentleman who sits in Brazil, who is probably one of the closest gents I have that I would go to at the drop of a hat if I ever needed anything, from a conversation to, you know, the kind of thing that most guys would go, that's my brother from another mother. Geoff is someone who we've known from fairly early on in our
yeah,
and someone that I rate exceedingly highly.
I'm going to put the we in there. We rate Geoff very, very highly.
I speak of the royal I.
I met Geoff on LinkedIn, and Geoff contacted me when he saw what we were doing with APA, and his enthusiasm, he could have come along and just walloped me, because he was like, oh my God, this is what the therapy world needs, this is a breath of fresh air, I want to get involved in that. And he actually was the one that said to us, I don't know about my insurance, I'm in Brazil, I'm in England, what can we do about insurance? So I said, let me get back to you, Geoff. Literally called Holistic Insurance Services and sent over our membership to them. They loved it so much that by Monday, as this was on the Friday, they said, you know what, we'll not only endorse APA, we will also give every single member a discount. This is what you need, your emergency supervision, exactly what needs to be there for therapists that have an issue, because so many end up calling us, an insurance service. We're not therapists, we haven't got the answers. So having emergency supervision was one of their biggest reasons as to why that they believed in us. And their exact phrase was, this is a breath of fresh air, which was exactly what Geoff had said to us. So then I was able to go back to Geoff and say, Geoff, you can get the insurance and you can be able to. Geoff,
and I saved a few pounds as well.
Thank you. You're one of the very first people that was incredibly supportive, and we consider him a team member. He's one of our inner core team members, advises us, guides us, wraps our knuckles if necessary, and has the confidence to be able to do that. And we're grateful for that. So Geoff, over to you.
Geoff, give everyone a bit more of a sense of yourself, your background, the experience that you come at, and then we'll have a proper chat.
I'd just like to say that you know, when I first saw your ideas on APA, it was very, very easy to be enthused. I mean, it was like, I think we were all waiting for something different. I love what Dennis says, and I love the way that APA kind of embraces the difference without the boxes, the tick boxes. I love the idea of the ability to be able to speak what it is in our minds, because the only way we're going to change what's in our minds is if we actually know what's in them. You know, if people don't or are not absolutely PC, then okay, let them be not PC, then we can work with that. But if their thoughts are just in their mind, you know, where are they going to go? And I love that about APA, and I love what Dennis said, and I think that's a breath of fresh air as well. I think we're all waiting for this openness. You know, most people with awareness will say, look, you know, by shutting people down is not the answer. Let us all speak, even if it's not very nice. Let's feel offended and let's get on with it. You know, let's really open up the debate. And you know, that was one of the reasons. And then obviously to very, very close friends now. Very, very. You know. So, okay, so basically, I specialise in addiction. Dennis, I was going to write a paper for you, and I just remember when you were speaking, and I will get on that now. I think shortly after we spoke, then the quarantine hit, and we've had it pretty rough here, as you can guess. We've been quarantined for a little over 4 months, and things are not looking much better. So it's a tough environment to be in. So, and you know, my clients that live here away from their countries are obviously struggling. And you know, some of them will have addictive personalities, and that's a real concern for me. So I've kind of been pretty much up against it. I'll give you a little bit of my background. I was a very young guy. I found myself, you know, pretty much kind of from a functional, dysfunctional background. Grew up, got into a couple of little gangs, got into trouble with the police, and found sort of solace in substances. I hit about 25 years of age, and I felt suicidal and didn't know where to turn. So basically, I went to a doctor who sent me to a hospital in Euston Road. You all know the University College Hospital. There was a clinic linked to that called City Roads, which so sadly, after nearly, I think it was 40 years, was closed down last year because of, you know, the government and austerity and lack of funding. It was one of the only self-referral units in Europe, actually. I don't know about lately, but that was one of them where if you had an addiction problem and you were suicidal, you could refer yourself through UCH, which I did. They saved my life, sent me off to a rehab, which I don't know if Asa would know. It's a very old, I think that it's still available, but it's not as big as what it was. Phoenix House, the massive old concept house, which probably would turn people's hair grey if we spoke about it. Now, what I went through in 2 years there was phenomenal. It was incredible. And when people were telling me about it, I thought, oh my God, this sounds a bit kind of strange, but once going through it, that I realised that there was a lot of what they were saying made absolute sense, but only as a package. One of the things that they did for me when I left was they decided that if you're going to drink and stop your substance of choice, then we're going to teach you to do it responsibly. Well, you can imagine, can't you? It was a bit of a disaster, but they taught me some very important information. And that went on. I changed, I relapsed and changed and got myself in and out of a bit of a mess throughout my life. I studied as a social worker and a voluntary worker. And then I was a carpenter. I got a break in the film industry. So I worked in the film, and I worked with some massive films like Harry Potter, Batman, Da Vinci Code, some big Angels and Demons. We blew up the helicopter in that. And what happened was, while I was working on them, I saw a lot of my very close friends and not so close friends using quite a lot of alcohol and cocaine to just get on with their life. I mean, the film industry was basically everything. It was the social life, it was your life, people missing their families. Most people had it in order, and some people didn't. And a very, very close friend of mine nearly died from his experience. And I remember thinking I would really like to go back into addiction and work with something. And then computer graphics come along and changed the Harry Potter series, which was my main kind of work line. And then I decided, right, I'm going to train. I had a bit of money in the bank, so I was working my socks off. Thought I'll train. So I train, remembering that I've got a different idea about addiction. I believe that many people with addiction issues fall through the net. I believe that AA is a marvelous and inarguably it's the best kind of like support system in the world, and they've saved millions of lives. So I'm not here to criticize it, but the people that don't fit are the people that want to socially drink or have something, you know, that the A said, if you're still involved in any substance, you're not really part of your solution. And I've argued that because after leaving Phoenix House, I went into the A's for a while. So I slowly started to develop a concept of my own. I actually went back to work in the clinic that saved my life. I worked in a wet house, which is people that are on the streets with a room that don't often stay there, but are using crack and alcohol and all sorts of stuff, trying to convince them to get into the clinic, which I also worked, and then to a rehab, which I also worked. So I was one of the few staff members that moved around. So you can imagine the knowledge and what I was gaining. And then I found myself in Brazil. So I'm working now, I've worked with the people with the lowest of luck, if you like, in society, to now some of the people with the best luck, if you want, in society. But addiction it's not prejudiced. It hasn't got an ism. It's part of what I believe is a facet, a part of us that for whatever reasons, usually trauma-based, I don't think most of us wouldn't argue against that. There is something biological that I've noticed. There's an oversensitivity in an addicted person that is unusual. And I honestly don't think I could name one of my clients, which I've had hundreds, that didn't sort of exhibit that oversensitivity with trauma. And trauma's on a scale. You know, I use the analogy, if you're in a war and you saw 20 people blown up and you was a type of person, I mean, this is a terrible analogy, but this is reality, that person doesn't necessarily develop post-traumatic stress disorder. But yet somebody that's maybe experienced, one person they didn't even know may develop some kind of stress disorder. And it's similar to addiction. We don't really know, but there are some commonalities. So basically what I've developed is a strategy. I kind of use strategies as like BAs because I think they've got a marvelous methodology of 90 meetings in 90 days, which is for somebody who's giving up their crutch, their substance of choice for often many years, needs something put in place for them to do that transitional period. So what I do, I've developed a strategy-based therapy, which is based person-centered on the client. What is it that you like to do? Or what is it that you think you would like to do if you wasn't using? Because most of them can't do it because they're using. And most people will say, well, I've always wanted to do horse riding. I've always wanted to do swimming regularly or whatever, you know, art. I'll give you some examples. Making furniture was another one. You know, these are all real strategies that come from them. And then I encourage them to put them in place. What I also encourage is a time, if possible, but not always, not everybody likes to do this, it's a transition where I get the person to leave all substances, if possible, alone for a period, because we're talking about turning around habits. And I really believe that if we've learned something, we can unlearn it. And if we can look at the trauma that created the learning, the habit, then all the better. But it's not necessarily, but I think it's just deeper therapy. So basically I use this as part of my methodology. But something else I think is very important. We need to empower the person with the addictive problems because they're very disempowered by their addiction. So what I use as well, I remember I was at college and I remember my tutor talking about facets and I was fascinated with facets. What are facets? You know, where do they come from? Their thoughts and their impressions inside of the mind. You know, where do these come from? I shouldn't do this. You know, and then I found TA, transactional analysis. I love it. The adaptations that we are forced into as children and adults, as society, parents, whatever, say that we should do, we shouldn't do. And then they become part of our personality. Again, if you've learned something, you can unlearn it. But if you like something, you can keep it also. I mean, it's all very, very flexible. Then I started to realize that the person that is observing the facets is the true self. Now, this is often lost by people with deep addictions. The true self is lost into the facets and then into the addictive personality, which is grown out of all proportion because we fed it the most. And the true self is the volume's gone down and is just give up. So what do? We develop the true self. We find that people say, well, who am I? Where is my true self? Well, that's the work we've got to find that. What do you like? What don't you like? You know, what was it like as a child? Do you remember feeling free? Do you remember, was it always traumatic or chaotic? And then we slowly do the work. One of my clients said to me the most amazing thing after his journey was phenomenal. He said he created this saying, I found my new normal, which was just amazing. And he said to me as well, it's almost like, Geoff, we could come here and talk about anything. Doesn't really matter, does it? Because when I release stuff, it helps me find myself. And that's what I believe that for me and my clients here now, with my experiences, has developed the making of a model that when I get some time, and it's kind of in its journey still. So, you know, I keep thinking, I've had clients say, why don't you write about it? I thought, because it's not finished yet. You know, it's like work in progress. But one day I would like to develop a model based on this experience, on what I just kind of outlined for you. I mean, it's a little bit more complex than that, but not too much more complex. I think in therapy, certainly training, it's like the more difficult it was made or sounded, it was kind of the more important it appeared, and somehow it got a bit more credence. But actually, I think, you know, therapy is really quite simple, isn't it? You think about it. It's somebody with issues unloading them to get clarity, to find themselves a different dimension. Really, I mean, you know, and when we've got to keep some boundaries and stuff. But that's kind of where I am. I'm in Brazil. I'm working away. I'm doing some pretty nice work, which is great. And you know, from my background, somebody who nearly did die, I was pretty close to it. To be here now, you know, like rippling as we do, all of us, we ripple, we send out ripples, and we help people. You know, I can sit here and say, you know, that, well done, Geoff, but not in an arrogant way, but in a humble way.
Geoff, you're reminding me of when you talk about the facets of ourselves, and when I was diagnosed with cancer and I came out the other side, it was like cancer gave me access to a facet of myself which I hadn't even really appreciated was truly there, and combined with lots of other things that happened to take place at the same time, and very importantly meeting David off of LinkedIn at the same time. It was almost like there's an old Cherokee saying about, you know, cancer is the cloud that once removed you get to see clearly. And that's almost exactly, yeah, it's almost exactly what happened to me. I began to see that I didn't just want to work in the room with the clients. I love my work with clients. I absolutely love it. But to take it outside the room and use that ethos of connection to expand it to therapists, to coaches, to the world of mental health. What you're saying about facets is really affecting how I'm tapping into that right now and saying I really get where you come from. And you're a total empath, Geoff. I know Geoff is. He has a level of emotion that when he speaks, he feels. And truth be told, you know, I remember the first time he came over to England last year and we met you and I was sharing what happened to me, and we had to work with the emotion between the two of us, didn't we, Geoff?
Yeah, it was quite something, the connection, wasn't it?
Yeah, it resulted in a lovely big hug and an appreciation of us being there, being able to talk it through and sharing and enjoying and seeing where it was going to go. And Geoff is he is like a brother of another mother for both of us. I go to Geoff.
I feel very similarly, very similar. It's an amazing connection that we all had.
And yeah, I think, you know, when you were saying that, you know, what we do ultimately is very, very simple. By being that light so other people can find their path. A&A means torchbearer. It's the perfect name for the perfect analogy of what it is that we all do. As torchbearers, we are all lighting somebody else's path. And we do it day in and day out without even thinking that that's the way we do it. And I think everyone that is on board with that does that in such a beautiful way. And you know, I can't pay you any more compliments. You've had your quota for this month, so
no more. I won't be able to get off my chair. My head will be warm.
But if anybody does ever have a question about addiction and they are struggling with it in any way, shape or form,
yeah, please just contact me.
Absolutely, and I know Geoff would absolutely be there to help anybody out in any thought, in any feeling. He knows his stuff.
Really does.
And most importantly, he's a human being that really enjoys sharing and giving and helping. So thank you very much. Margaret's got something for us.
Sorry, I would like again to say something. I'm really pleased that thanks to APA, I was able to meet Geoff, and
me too.
He has become a really good friend. And I can say really that he is such a genuine man, therapist, but he's full, as you said, an empath, and he absorbs feelings. He is able to analyze them in a very open-minded way. It's phenomenal, really. So I really like Geoff, and I highly again recommend him really for so many things, not only addiction. I know you're specialized in addiction, but really I think that everyone can see him for many different things, different topics, and different issues they need to deal with.
Thank you so much. I've made some wonderful friends, and I hope I keep making more. It's been quite a journey with APA, and happy birthday, APA. Happy birthday, all of us.
We wouldn't do it without you all here. Geoff and Margaret.
We wouldn't have got here without Geoff's contribution and Margaret, but we'll come to Margaret in a second.
Yeah, in a little while.
But first,
we have another raffle.
Give me a second. Just relax. Look, she's trying to give stuff away. I mean, it's not like Argos back there, you know. It's not like we've got stuff stacked up just to throw out. I want to say a special thank you on behalf of everyone at APA. For all of the participants in today's In Conversation With episodes. Caroline Flynn, Paul White, Glenda, and Dennis. All of you gave amazing contributions to today, and it would be wrong not to say thank you in this forum while you are here. I know Paul just bounced out, but you know, he had to wake up early to be here. You know,
really early.
Really early.
There's lots of people on different times, in between Pasquale somewhere, Asa somewhere, Geoff is somewhere, Margaret's somewhere. Well, you're all somewhere, but they're outside of the UK.
The international kind of reach that APA has made in the last year has been phenomenal, and it's only because of the members and the quality of the quality control that APA uses in its membership application. And that quality control comes down to the conversation of discovery that is held not by us, but by our members. That quality control, if you guys let in bad stuff, then we'd have bad stuff to do. But you haven't. You've taken everything that APA stands for, everything that the framework allows, and you've utilised that so beautifully to make sure that the membership body is exactly as it needs to be moving forward. And
Well, I'm going to say, for those that aren't totally aware, the way the APA assessment works is that we have an internal team of assessors, not myself or David, because we'd be accused of letting in all our friends. So it's a very independent team, and they follow a framework. And that framework reflects the applicant's self-awareness. Now, obviously, there's going to be things that might go wrong in the future with that, but in essence, what we've learned, which is fascinating psychologically, what we've seen is, one, having an open group on Facebook has had a massive impact on how people work professionally because it is open to the public. So we have no breach to confidentiality, no conflict in any way. If anything, everybody works really well with their communication. Sorry, Ollie. And as for the applicancy part of it, we wanted to bring that in because we know the courage and motivation it takes just to pick up a phone and speak to somebody that you don't know from Adam. Now, not one of our team are attacking anybody. They want to have a conversation with the next applicant that comes in, because having that conversation can tell us everything about how somebody communicates, because it's a communication in itself. And it gives you the best example as to how you tap into that person's personality, how they're receiving, not knowing something. The ethos of everything is knowing that what you don't know is just as important as what you do know. Being able to be humble enough to say, I haven't got a clue what you're talking about, but I'd like to know what you're talking about. It isn't about getting all the answers right. It's about having the humility and assertiveness and confidence to be able to say, I don't understand that, but can you help me understand? Rather than become really defensive. And that's what we look for in those conversations. People that can be honest and open about how they feel, what they think, what they don't know, and what they do know. And that's the most important part of it, because it tells us a lot about their personality. And we want the best for clients, because we want a directory that when any client goes onto that directory, it's not picking out a sweet out of a sweet shop and praying that it's going to be okay. It's about being able to pick any single therapist on that directory and guarantee you've got a therapist that's self-aware. That, for me...
Can I tell him yet? Can I tell him? Please, can I tell him?
Oh.
Okay, so our next speaker is going to be Margareth, and then we're going to go to Asa before we close. But I know that there are people that are needing to rush off earlier than we will be here. So, about three weeks ago, we were approached by a group of businessmen, politicians, international politicians, that are looking to form an international NGO. This group of individuals have asked APA to support in the formation, the structure, and the development of that international NGO.
Roz is falling off her chair again. Just don't hurt yourself, Roz.
We have, in the last week, we have received the official letter of intent from the NGO that they will be using APA programs, APA teachings, APA structure in the delivery of the NGO's work overseas.
Which means we need people's help.
Now, how does that impact on every single one of our members? The NGO management team will be authorised to reach out to APA members on a consultancy basis. And those members will be paid by the NGO for their information, for their time, for their contribution to what the NGO is seeking to work on. Okay? Now, with the NGO has 5 areas of focus. So not all areas are going to meet with all members. Some will, some won't. So 5 areas. And I'm going to save the best one to last. So, you're just going to have to brace yourself. Okay? So the NGO is going to be looking at providing support overseas on education and the structure of education systems. Social care. They are looking at redesigning how social care interacts with the communities in the areas in which they work. Justice. They are looking to see how they can integrate our psychological understandings into the justice systems. They are looking at APA's Community Learning Hive program for Steps to Success, which takes 3 points of intervention into the justice sector. 4, youth engagement and employability. Using our programs, using our members to develop the psychological resilience in order to make youth employability and engagement successful at each term. Okay? 4 amazing points on their own. Yeah? I think every single person that we have spoken to over the last year would appreciate that the mental health system, as has been grown over the last 50 or 60 years, has not delivered on what it set out to achieve. If it had, we probably wouldn't have the mental health crises that we have. So there is something missing. The NGO is asking APA to produce the mental health structure for every point at which the NGO will deliver packages overseas.
For an entire country.
And beyond.
And you see, you're all on silent. I can see all your expressions. It's been a bit of a crazy week behind the scenes, holding on to this information and going, can't wait to share it.
I couldn't hold it in. Sorry. What this ultimately means is that we have 5 of the interlaying systems that we can contribute to how they work together. And this is the first time that we're aware of that any interlaying system has been proposed. APA proposed this a week last Sunday. And within 24 hours, the team that is running the NGO have agreed that within the next 9 months, they propose to seek United Nations funding to secure that delivery. Now that puts APA's directory onto a UN platform. You guys, as members, will be international consultants to that NGO. I can't give you guys any more support than that. That tops absolutely anything that I can imagine that we could do. And with the work being done by Sue on the social care side, and I want to say thank you for the work already being done there, for the stuff that's been done on the justice work that was already in play, but also the stuff that Vonnie is doing to design that mental health structure. This mental health program will start from high school through to the training programs for delivery directly to clients.
This is a blank screen. So we have the ability, and if you like, from one of my personal ethoses, I think psychology, as in even the labelling of feelings, should be taught to children from nursery up. So that children learn to label what they feel.
Before what they think.
Absolutely.
Okay, now this is where that interlaying plays out. Okay, because we've got the canvas for education. We're taking the storyboard workshops that APA already has available and we're developing them into the entire education platform. This is a massive project and it's not going to happen overnight, but the timeline that the group setting the NGO have given is by February they want to be seeking international finance in order to get this off the ground.
So we will, and I'm speaking for myself, if I'm the one designing this, I'm not going to do this without other input. Whether or not my ideas, I like them or not, are irrelevant. I believe in multiple people being able to contribute their ideas, their thoughts, their plans, what they'd like to see. If you had a country where you could implement mental health across the board in the best structured possible, then I'm looking to hear what your thoughts and your plans might be. This is too big for my head to go, I don't need help here. I will need a lot of help here.
And we, as Glenda said, reach out, as Geoff has pointed out, we know that what our limitations are. I can do all of the structural stuff. I can do all of the experience of building the timeline, everything else for these guys. What I can't do is all of these small component parts, which ultimately are the cogs that make this work. So when you look at the information that we gave you earlier about Judge Mary Bullock's support and taking us into the US, this from an international NGO being formed over the next 6 weeks and then seeking funding within the next 8 to 9 months. We are in a very, very different place today than we were yesterday.
A year ago.
But I really do ask that each of you, if you have contributions, if there's things, even if it's just an idea of what should we be doing in these systems, bring it to bear. This is an opportunity. We are literally starting with a blank piece of paper. What should the NGO be presenting to the United Nations to say, give us funding and we can give you this?
You have the opportunity to be involved in a country's future, a mental health future for a country. I mean, I'm saying those words out loud, and to me, that sounds crazy in itself to be saying that. But we as members, us as contributors, can create something here that is beyond the pale ours to own. Ours to own, to say that we had a part to play in a country's entire mental health structure, which means work for as many people that will want that work. So bear in mind, this is about being able to train groups of people, this is about being able to educate other people, this is trainers doing training. So the opportunities for every single one of you to actually have your name stamped on this, work with this, be part of this, it's there for you. It's there. It's up to you to decide whether or not you want it alongside us. The option is your choice, but we prefer you to be there than be on our own.
Roz is in. I know Caroline is in.
I know Jay East is thinking of taking her brain over. Yeah, absolutely. I can see Nettie doing it. I can see Sue. I can see everybody there.
I think
this is interesting.
We promised you something special. I think we should ask the question, is that special enough?
Yeah.
Good, because
I just see a foot. I think Roz has just passed out, just killed over.
Bless her. Roz, make sure you don't hurt yourself as you drop on the floor, please.
Good, cool. Caroline, I said to you in our conversation yesterday that as part of this, the QR code, the resourcing, everything that we've talked about for the last 18 months, this comes right to the fore here. And I hope that you can now see why I was saying what I was saying to you yesterday.
Which was, don't say anything, Rob.
Don't say anything to... Don't ask Bonnie, because she'll tell you everything before it comes. But the research that you've done, the resources that you've made available are going to be fundamental to making sure each of the components, both in social care, but also in education, justice, and the mental health sector is going to be a massive part of that.
We've yet to hear Margareth talk, and we've yet to hear Asa talk.
I want to hear from Caroline.
Sorry.
No, and it's really exciting to be part of the journey. So thank you so much. I do feel I've been through really from start to being here really, and the progress has been just amazing. And even to be part of this group today, meeting everybody. I mean, I've seen the interaction online and everything, and it's just been amazing. So thank you all, and it's just been wonderful to be here. And absolutely moving forward, you know how I feel about the resources that I've developed, and I think that it should be with everybody anyway. So to be part of such a fabulous project moving forward, absolutely. Well, you know that anyway, so it'd be wonderful. Thank you both so much.
So
Thank you all. Thank you.
right, let's get the last raffle out, and hopefully this won't go to a member. So I'm saying that because this is 12 months of membership.
Yes.
So if it goes to a member, your next renewal will be free.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
It's as fair as we can make it. So
I'm going to pick Sharon because I know Sharon is very much attached to Glenda. Aren't you, Sharon? You're part of her amazing team.
I am indeed. Hello.
I recognise you. Lovely to see you.
Thank you.
I'd like you to pick a number in between 1 and 7, please.
5.
5, there you go. Asa, in between A and J.
J.
So 5J.
4582.
4582. 4582. 4582. 4582. 4582. Pasquale.
Pasquale.
You just won yourself a membership.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. Thank you. Just what the doctor ordered.
So as soon as your paperwork comes through, that credit note will be attached to it.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much, guys.
All right.
Pasquale is somebody on a personal note, but bizarrely, when we first met Pasquale and we realised that he was in Germany, most people, some know this about me, a lot don't. I was actually born in Germany. And Pasquale actually knows where I was born. And one of these days...
Stays away from there. Yeah, it's a bit like Chernobyl. You just don't go after the attack.
So we intend at some point to pop over and see Pasquale because I would like to go back to my birthplace. I haven't been back to my birthplace basically since I was 11. So I left Germany at that point, never seen it again. But do actually want to go back, and we'll take the opportunity of tying in with Pasquale. He also works for the military, which tapped in with my father's history because that's why I was in Germany. Well, my mother was in Germany giving birth after me planning that one. How did you
work that one out? I'm going to Germany.
Right, but we know we've got Margareth to come, and we know we've got Asa to come. Asa, I have been practicing your name like you would not believe it. For everybody that doesn't know, I kept on calling Asa. And it was a real conflict. And David was saying to me, just call him ADB. ADB's fine. And I went, no, I'm going to practice Asa. I'm going to practice Asa. So I'm working on it and I'm stuck with it. And I've actually done it right.
You've done really well.
There you go, Asa.
Done very well.
Which one's next?
All I will say on the training of name realignment, clicker training works and treat training doesn't. That shock collar on the clicker works wonders, but the treat stuff just doesn't. Never use it on the dog, but on Vonnie, it's fabulous. Works wonders.
There's no shock treatment going on in this house, just to let you know. Right, so we have Margareth.
Margareth.
Yeah.
We're going to hand over to you. For those that aren't in the group, don't know, Margareth was one of our first full members, and she was the first from overseas. She was our first overseas member. She is in Paris at the moment. I believe you are still at home, thankfully.
Yeah, yeah, I am.
And an amazing individual, phenomenal coach, but also a therapist as well. We've had umpteen conversations around the coaching arena and tips and tricks backwards and forwards over the last 10 months. It's been absolutely phenomenal. I want to thank you for all of your contributions to.
Thank you.
I was thinking, if Margareth, if you got in touch with Glenda, I don't know how far apart you are in France at the moment, but you never know.
No, look, listen, stop stalking Glenda. You can't get people
It would
to
be
do
Margareth that
stalking
would
for
be doing
you.
the stalking. No, I was just thinking, as they're in the same country, it could be a good opportunity. I don't know where she is, but you never know, Margareth.
Just reach out. But I'm going to pass the screen over to yourself.
Thank you.
Margaret did a phenomenal article in our birthday edition of the newsletter, and I'm absolutely grateful for it. But I'm going to leave Margaret to take it away from here.
Thank you. Well, first of all, happy birthday, APA. I don't know if you can all see it, but it's a tiny candle.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much.
Best I can from home. So my name is Margareth, obviously. I was born in Paris, but I was raised in an international environment, an American environment, right from the start, right from my birth. So I was lucky enough to be raised with international people from different cultures, religions, backgrounds, right from the start. So actually, I was born in France, but I was really not really with French people, which sounds weird. But most of my friends were from abroad. So I've been really used to befriending and being with people from different backgrounds and cultures, and that's crucial to me now. I'm really fascinated by diversity, but in the sense of different cultures and differences, and actually embracing differences and understanding differences, whatever the differences are. And that's how I was raised, thanks to my school, my parents, and my environment. So that's the reason why I've decided to become an intercultural coach, so an expat coach, if you prefer. To put it in a nutshell, so I was born in Paris. I was raised in an international context. Then when I was a teenager, my mother got terribly sick for about 6 years. And I decided to get immersed in psychology, but just reading, because in France at the time, it was a kind of taboo, actually, psychology. It was more based on philosophy than psychology. And there is this thing still in France nowadays, which sounds a bit crazy, but still in France nowadays, that actually psychology is either intellectual more than emotional, and is more, and people may see a therapist because they are crazy or really seriously ill. There is still this trend nowadays in France compared with the UK and definitely England. So my mother got terribly sick. I tried to understand where it could come from. And I decided to read many psychological books at the time. But because of the taboo in France and the culture, well, the mentality, I would say at the time, I didn't know I could be trained as a therapist. And then years later, I moved to London. And where I lived for over 10 years, actually way over 10 years. And thanks to friends of mine, because I was a dancer and I had friends in the dance community who were therapists as well. And thanks to them, they told me actually I could be trained as a therapist. And that's the reason, and that's how I decided to be trained as a therapist at WPA Therapy in London. And then I was trained as well at Egypt, which was more Jungian oriented. So I did psychodynamic and I did a kind of Jungian oriented course, but actually my approach as a therapist is integrative, because I've learned, of course, I've been trained in different approaches, and my way of being with my clients really is being with my clients and absorbing my clients' emotions. It's really a combination of person-centered, psychonomic, cognitive at times, and actually I use, as a coach, not as a therapist necessarily, but as a coach definitely, I use the cognitive behavior approach as well, because it's very useful as a coach. After my mother felt better, my father got sick, and he was diagnosed with cancer, and the prognosis was awful, about 3 months' time. Fortunately, he lived for 5 years, with many ups and downs, of course, and he died 5 years later. I lost all my family members to cancer, except my mother, who survived it twice, and then myself, nearly died, but not of cancer, but I nearly died twice as well. So when I started to be trained as a therapist, I decided to get involved with the NHS, and later on, I became a member of the psychological support group at the NHS to help cancer-stricken patients. So I was helping them psychologically and emotionally at the NHS. And then that was at Hammersmith. And then I decided as well to volunteer with Marie Curie Cancer Care, and I was helping psychologically and emotionally cancer-stricken people who were about to die but wanted to die at home. So I was helping them and their family. So that was, of course, extremely draining and extremely rewarding at the same time. But I really wanted to do something and for people suffering from cancer and their family who actually suffer from cancer as well, but in a different way. So my baseline, due to that, my baseline is really loss and grief. So I decided to specialize in loss and grief, which does not necessarily mean only losing someone. Of course, loss and grief is any hard transition you may be going through in life. So that could be career change, expatriation, because that's a loss of country, or getting immersed in a new culture with new codes, new way of behaving, actually new aspects of yourself that you need to find out. So loss really in any shape or form, really. So that's what I've decided to specialize in, as well as expatriation, obviously, and narcissism. Narcissism, it's something actually I haven't really mentioned in my articles or my blog, and that's something I've been dealing with a lot with many clients of mine from different backgrounds, and I know where it comes from, and I've decided to write way more about it because that's a topic I know really well due to my past as well. I got divorced. So there are many things really that I've decided to specialize in, not only due to my training, but also my past experiences, and thanks, of course, to my therapist, what I've been able to overcome and understand about myself and my repetitive patterns. And I was thinking about something as well. Dennis, I'm not sure if you're still here yet. Dennis, I'm going to send you an article actually over the weekend about this as well.
Thank you.
Thank you to you. So really, rightly, those are my expertise, I would say. I don't really like this term, but my fields, I will say. Is there any question? Is that clear? Yeah, I'm also a speaker because I give talks in London, in Wales, and in Paris, or actually anywhere, and online with the US or many other countries because I work online and I work face-to-face because I'm an international coach and therapist. I do work online a lot, more than face-to-face actually. I work mainly in English, but of course I'm fully bilingual, so I work in English and in French. I'm fully bilingual and I'm fully bicultural. So I work in both languages, but I must say that most of my clients prefer to speak in English. Well, of course, obviously, I work in both languages. And I'm also about...
I was going to say, Margaret, I don't know how many people agree with me on this. I can honestly say every single client that has ever sat in front of me, right underneath everything is grief.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's really, even with narcissism, because it's a loss of hope, loss of what we're hoping for in the relationship, where you're fantasized about. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, loss of trust, loss of belief, loss of
so many things. Yeah, I agree.
Jobs, loss of relationship. If you look at every single person that ever presents something to you, you peel back the layers and there's always grief right at the bottom.
Always, always, always. That's true. That's something that actually comes up a lot in all my sessions, I will say, with all my clients. And that's something very useful.
It's an incredibly important thing to be aware of.
Absolutely, I totally agree. I totally agree.
Absolutely. Somebody can present with anxiety from the loss of something underneath.
Of course, the anger and denial and relocating the loss as well.
And she's actually saying, well, but this means I want food. So I'm going to get her out and give her some food, or else we'll have a lot of sound, because the only thing we can hear is the dog barking. So bear with me one moment. Come on, Ollie.
So expatriation actually is about loss as well, and depending on the cultures, it's very hard for people to adjust into another culture, which could be very different, or they may be seen in a very different way that they're used to, and that is they may feel deprived of their own identity at times. And actually, when I had to move back to France about 3 years ago, and I felt that myself, it was an issue when I moved back to France. So it's very interesting, and most of my clients were expats and lived in different countries, and not only two, but really different countries. Most of them will never go back to their home country, actually. They want to live in one of the countries they decided will be their home. So that's very, very interesting, emotionally and intellectually, of course.
Yeah.
And on my part, I'm thinking about moving back to London or moving to Brussels. So moving again, actually, living in a different country again.
Desire to immerse in other cultures just doesn't die out once you've got that bug, as it were. One of the things that I think has always struck me in the conversations that we've had when we're talking about coaching, and certainly in recent times, because the business world now being more online than it has ever been before,
way more,
and quite often against its will. You know, businesses have gone, no, we need everybody in the office, we need to see people working, and now they're going, actually, no, we don't. Please stay at home. And that cultural change is something that I think, in the conversations that you and I have had, is something that really does ring out true in everything that you...
Absolutely, and that's actually a common trend, I will say, in Europe at least. But depending on the culture, that does change, because in England, for instance, people are more used to working online. In France, it's totally new. They found out during the quarantine, actually, that, actually working online could be good. Working from home is not that bad, and that's something totally new. And having clients from different cultures.
She's decided enough is enough. She's tired of everything. She wants out, but she doesn't really want out. Come on. Go on.
So having clients from different cultures, it's very interesting to see how they respond and react actually to changes as well. So not only based on their own past, of course, whatever the culture, we all respond to past trauma, attachment we forged when we were kids, but also the culture. So that has to be taken into consideration. The culture where you were raised in and the culture you were immersed in. It's very important, because all of that is also part of the dynamics and the relationship dynamics and your responses, emotional responses to any changes, however hard they may be. The other point is because of my expertise, so loss and grief, expatriation, narcissism, I really focus on offering a holding environment, so nurturing environment, holding environment, safe of course, but everyone needs to do that. But I'm really focusing on the good enough mother, good enough parenting, if it is good enough, at times it's not, and the holding environment with very safe and clear and strict boundaries is very, very important. So my practice, so attachment theory, Winnicott, playing as well, actually part of is very interesting. The splitting part as well as the impact of this is very interesting. All of these different theories are very much ingrained in my practice, and attachment theory is something I really focus on, because it does tell a lot if you haven't worked on it, actually. If you haven't been in therapy and understand it, assess it, it has a massive impact on your relationship dynamics. So about loss and grief, I actually gave a presentation in Paris last week and many others in London, even one just before the quarantine in London. Actually, I was in London, and I gave one to the English National Ballet. And I was giving this talk to teenagers, of course, dancers who are teenagers, and that was some of them, unfortunately, had to deal with suicide from their peers. So it was very interesting. I usually give talks to adults, and giving this talk to teenagers, and especially in the dance field, it's very structured. It's very tough when you're a teenager. And most of them were expats actually living in London. So that was really fascinating as well. And all of this, I could understand the different questions that were asked at the time, and different forms of help, depending on the culture. Even a dancer from Scotland actually had a hard time to adjust in England. So it doesn't mean that he has to be far away. Even within the United Kingdom, someone from Scotland could have a hard time getting immersed in England. And that's something to think about as well. In France, it could be someone from another region, really. So all of that, any change, any transition, life challenges, all of this leads to loss and grief in a way. So that's something to deal with. And then the intensity, the proportion of course, of the loss and grief depends on so many different factors, which are external or internal. External factors could be the place of death, if there are successive deaths, if you have many deaths at once to deal with, actually, it could be really, of course, harder. So there are external factors to take into consideration, and internal factors. Internal factors could be the attachment bond you had, or the attachment bond you forged when you were a kid. Of course, the relationship you had with the person, the deceased. So many different factors, external and internal, and you can get all that on the presentation I gave, and actually which is online thanks to APA. So you can find that on the website. So it will be clearer and more detailed, because otherwise it's going to be too long. I would love to talk about it longer, but I'm trying to be as short as possible and as concise as possible, and I'm not very good at that. So
I think certainly for us, the contribution that Margaret has made to the work that she does internationally, as an example of how we can reach out as professionals, as colleagues. It's phenomenal to think that we are not as isolated as we believe
we're not.
We are. And I would always question, why have we been allowed to believe that we are isolated as professionals? Why have we allowed that perception to filter into our entire existence? And Margaret's a perfect example of where that just doesn't apply. And I applaud you for the work that you do. It's absolutely phenomenal. And if anybody has any questions...
And thank you for everyone for listening to me.
Can I just say something? Is that okay? Just quickly.
You can.
I just want to thank Margaret as well, because obviously I'm away from home and I've struggled. And the one thing that you're talking about that really sticks out, it's the changes, but it's the change of structure, or the loss of structure that we once knew to something different. And that, you know, like narcissism is a structure, it's all structures. We live in structures, this is what we like, right? So just anything, it's not really the distance or the place, it's that loss of method, of structure. And you've helped me see that. You've helped me see that. I didn't see that before I met you. And I think, you know, when you're talking today, I remembered, yeah, this is how you helped me, and I want to thank you for that. And an absolute pleasure meeting you as well. And
yeah, really. Me too.
Yeah.
Me too, really. And thank you for this. Thank you for this feedback. Really, it's I'm really touched.
It's been very, very, very helpful on my journey. Extremely helpful. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Margaret. Elaine, yes, it is going to be recorded, so you will hear Asa. I apologise for the animals. They're like siblings. They're like 30 siblings. So when one starts, the other starts. And there's nobody else in the house at the moment, so the dog won't, in essence, go outside and stay outside. And you know what they say about working with animals and kids? Don't do it. So this one's desperate for cuddles, and this one's eyeing me up on the floor as if to say, you move and I'm going to have you. I'm going to bark non-stop. So I'm doing my best, and so is David. Bear with us. Because we're on to one more raffle.
No, that's it.
Is it?
Raffles are done.
Okay, so we have the amazing Asa, all the way from Harvard in America. And when you hear this man speak,
no, not
as
you.
the dog said,
Asa,
make sure
not
you
you.
listen. Asa, take it away, please.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. What an incredible group of speakers today. I've really enjoyed listening to each and every one of you. Dave and Bonnie, thank you for inviting me to this conference and for allowing me the opportunity to speak about my hopes, my ambitions, my thoughts of the future of psychology. I'd like to highlight the importance of this conference and the issue of social interaction in the context of the present world crisis. You know, we all recognize that. And one thing I want to mention to Margareth and Geoff is, you know, and for some of those in the audience that may not know this, I have lived outside the country for 18 years, lived back in the States for the past 6 years. And, you know, I believe that not only, you know, if you live outside the country or live within different states or provinces of your country, it takes some change and it takes some adapting, and your worldview can be shaken in that process. But anyhow, I want to go on. And, you know, my hope and expectation for the field is that we'll become a more welcoming place for interdisciplinary disciplines and practices. Reflecting back on the past, I can recall a time that technology and the relationship of science were much different than they are today. Technology and the scientific fields now play a significant role in how we interact with one another and how we see the world. They are directly and indirectly affecting how we see individuals, interact with others. But as technology becomes a more vital aspect of our daily lives, we need to be mindful of how we interact with our patients and our clients. We are perhaps living in one of the most vulnerable times in human history. The principles of psychology are essential to having a more comprehensive understanding of the experiences of these vulnerable populations. It is important that we as practitioners practice mindfulness, meditation, and balance, not only in our daily lives, but throughout the process of our work. It is without a doubt that the fields of psychology and mental health are going to play a critical role in recovering from our global community's current angst. Whether you're discussing our current pandemic, the racial tensions, the divisions, or global factors, the field of psychology and mental health are essential for the recovery of our global community. We must be willing to be used as providers of mental health. It is an exciting time to be involved in the discipline of psychology. I firmly believe that our field will play an intrinsic role in bringing people together. I have long believed that psychology has not only a profound understanding of the human condition, but it has a remarkable ability of impacting that condition. As practitioners, it is our responsibility of leaving a positive impression on our corner of the world. How do we leave a positive impression on our corner of the world? We must begin by practicing what we preach. I have known a variety of practitioners who are apprehensive in receiving counsel. You know what I'm saying. I have worked with practitioners who fear others, knowing that they are seeking therapeutic care. Why would a practitioner of mental health fear mental health care? I did a little digging and found some research, and it says the research suggests being afraid was identified as a core process. The power and control, stigma and discrimination. It was found to have significantly impacted an individual's choices for or towards mental health care. If we're going to encourage others to seek out mental health care, then we must begin by removing our own hangups with the field. Sadly, you cannot imagine the number of practitioners that I have dealt with, that I have worked with, that have felt fear and stigmatization when entering private practice. I've known so many. I've heard excuses from being reluctant to enter an office where there's a room filled with patients and clients, distrusting staff. That one always bothers me, because that comes into question my own work, who I choose to work in my office. But concerns about the community's perceptions and attitudes. How am I going to be seen by my community if I'm seen entering your office? And ultimately, feeling unsafe in the community and avoiding exposure of being a service provider. Evidence has suggested that fear plays an important role in shaping the experiences of people who use psychological services. As practitioners, we must break this cycle of fear and stigmatization and reluctancy. It begins when we treat mental health care the same as we would any other professional discipline. I have seldom known anyone to fear sharing that they're going to see a medical physician. Several on here today have shared that they've seen physicians, medical physicians, that they've been through medical treatment. But very few people in our world, including practitioners, sadly, including practitioners of various types, are willing to share that. Why is it that we are so fearful to have an open and candid discussion about having been to see a mental health practitioner? If we want to bring forth universal change and acceptance within our field, then we must be willing to universally and unconditionally accept the field as a source of care. Being a role model is important. Not only should we model and practice what we preach, but we should be certain that we believe the message that we are preaching. You know, I'll have to admit, throughout my life, there have been times that I would preach or speak something. Well, I don't mean preach in a religious context, by the way, but I'd preach or speak something and not firmly believe it. I'm sure no one else in here will say that or have to say that, but I have spoken things that were not truly ingrained and truly a part of my core person. It's through my own work and evolution that I've realized that what I'm preaching, what I'm speaking, what I'm indicating to my patients, I have to first and foremost believe. Otherwise, it's all false. Unfortunately, I've known a number of practitioners who have entered the field for the wrong reason. I've known some that have entered for the reason of monetary gain, believe it or not. It's not the right field to enter for monetary gain, but I've known a few that have entered for monetary gain. I've known others that have entered because of ego, that have entered because of what they can offer the field. Well, you know, to me, the field is about service and servanthood. It's about serving our brothers and sisters, our fellow human. I'm certain that you are aware that not all of our fellow practitioners recognize the significance of their calling. When I've spoken with young people considering entering the field of mental health, I have often asked, and by the way, I've taught university, I've worked with patients, I've worked a broad spectrum. So I've had many opportunities to work with youth and young people and young adults. You know, I often ask these questions when they're considering entering the field of mental health. What is it that motivates you to enter the field? What is the driving source? What is your driving source? What are your goals as a practitioner? How do you see yourself as a practitioner? And what is your passion? I've been bewildered by a few of the answers, but for the most part, a majority of the answers are altruistic. As a profession, in order for the field to flourish, it needs to embrace the individual differences and personalities that make up the overall composition of psychology. Consider the plethora of psychological approaches and orientations that make up the mental health field. For each field, I don't know if all of you entered the field knowing that there were a vast array of global approaches and orientations, but when I entered the field, I was naive. I figured that there was one approach. But my eyes soon opened once I began practicing and learning and studying that there are a vast array, just like a rainbow. So many different types of orientations and therapeutic approaches. And I think that's what brings us together. For each field, there's a subfield, as you know. And this breaks down even further. It is realistic to think that such a vast array of diverse psychological disciplines should share. It is unrealistic to think that such a vast array of diverse psychological disciplines should share the same approach. But we must recognize that there are a variety of approaches and utilize those approaches. For the field of psychology is as diverse as is the pebbles on the beach. As we know, the field of psychology is an eclectic body of thinkers. For me, the diversity is the heart of this movement, is the driving force behind this continuous evolution. Let's not forget that we're an eclectic body of thinkers, movers, and shakers. For each approach has its strengths and weaknesses. It is because of our diversity that we are capable of serving an array of issues. It is because of our diversity that we're capable of serving those who might not desire to be served. It is because of our diversity that we are capable of reaching the unreachable. It is because of our diversity that we have experienced such growth and momentum. In the whole scope of life and professional fields, we are still in our infancy. The good news is we still have room to grow. What an exciting time, not only to be a part of the field of psychology, but to be a part of a new interdisciplinary organization. I expect that the APA will serve as a beacon of hope, motivation, encouragement, and support for so many. It is a new leader in the field of psychology. It has the ability of reaching not only those in the United Kingdom, but well beyond the borders of the UK, as we've discussed today. Perhaps it may join forces with other organizations, proving the ultimate unifier. As I began to wrap up my conversation, I want you to think upon the following. What brought you to the field of psychology? When you think of the field, what is it that comes to mind? Do you have fondness for the field? Or do you have resentment? What is it that motivates you to practice? What are your motivations? I know my motivations. What are your motivations? What are your intentions? What is your ultimate goal? What brings you to this field? How will you be different than those that have come before you? My final question for you today is this: how are you going to be a contribution to the field? As we reflect on our professional past, we need to be cognizant of the lessons learned, both positive and negative. We must be mindful while reflecting on these lessons and adapt where we need to adapt, change where we need to change, and let the field be let's be a field that is capable of reaching the masses and changing our corner of the world. I do appreciate you all inviting me today, and I hope my message resonates with each and every one of you. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Bonnie. I don't know.
Thank you, Asa. Thank you very much. I could
Thank you.
listen to you for much longer.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Truly inspiring. Truly inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you.
And yeah, wow. Lost for words actually, which is unusual.
I'm kind of struck by the simplicity of the message, how clear that we can all move this forward, but we can do it so much quicker, so much clearer, so much cleaner by doing it together. And something that Asa pointed out, which I think it would be wrong to let slide, is for the first time we have to look at this sector as a service. This is not a charity, this is not a business, this is a service. And when we come together as a service, we can serve. And that service delivers something that has never been done before. And it would be wrong not to mention the one thing that we haven't mentioned so far all day, is APA and this beauty. This was the award that APA received for being the Therapeutic Accreditation Service of the Year.
Right.
And that came because we were assessed as a team of what it was that as a team APA was bringing to the corporate world. And that stems exactly from the demonstration of Asa's words today. I want to thank Asa phenomenally for his contribution.
Can I just say one thing? I think what you said is really striking. I was lost for words because I was quite moved by your words. But it's that, I think what you're saying is what the world is saying, that there's room for us all. There's room for every single model and idea. And I know when I started out on this journey, I was integrative, like so many of my peers, and then I felt that I needed to go back and I studied person-centered. And the resistance against my chosen kind of person-centeredness was in addiction was kind of frowned upon by many. And I got very defensive over that. What that taught me was that some people will fight their corner for their model. Some people will fight their corner for their race or for their sex or whatever. And it's a very tribal and a very old and primal, powerful part of us. But, you know, if we can become aware of that, I think what you're saying is we don't need to defend, we need to embrace.
That's right.
You know, just embrace each other's models and ideas and contribute, and let's grow together. And that's what I think. I know I wouldn't be lost for words for long, Asa. But yeah, that's what I picked up from your message. It was very powerful, very moving. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's where I was going to come in about that integration of whatever is appropriate for the person in front of you. It's not our job to fit somebody into a box. It is actually our role to help that person be what they want to be. And if that means using anything that works for that individual, that's what works. I mean, I think Geoff said, I brought up Geoff the other day on a thread where somebody somewhere had said PC doesn't belong with addiction. And my response to that was, the person-centered attributes are of empathy, UPR, acceptance. If you're a therapist that doesn't possess those, live and breathe those, no matter what modality that you practice, well then there's something wrong. Because that has to be surely the baseline of every positive relationship inside the therapy room and outside the therapy room. And we strongly believe that. Caroline, I can see you talking, but I don't know whether or not you're on mute.
I think she's on 2 calls at the same time.
She might be. She might be. We'll talk quite later about that one. But as Asa says, you know, if we don't work together, following the ethos of what we're helping that client do. The whole ethos of therapy is that client coming to you, and usually they say, you fix me, and obviously we know we can't do that, so we help them understand what's going on for them, help them grow and develop through facilitating what's going on, what's happened to them, how they react to it. That's called a team. There is no me here and them down there, or them up there and me down here. It's called that team, and taking that team out of the room and doing exactly what we've done today, which is creating a team. And for me, I'm ridiculously passionate about clients getting the best of the best, because I've heard too many horror stories of clients being treated absolutely despicably, and I don't think any client that has the guts, the motivation, the proactiveness and the self-awareness to want to change and takes that step to go into a therapy room, I don't think that client ever deserves a therapist that isn't self-aware and can work with that person individually. It is up to us to change the systems. If we're unhappy with them, let's change it, and that's what we're doing. Because there's nobody else that's going to do it, unless you find somebody else outside of Africa that's going, hey, we're starting something up. But the point is, we started this because of a synchronization of situations, events, you know, which truthfully was a little bit like magic. You know, cancer, bags of time. David Sleep, phenomenal coach. Put the two together, major politics in the therapy world at the moment, throw that one into the mix. I understood it, I got it. We deserve to create a better system. We are not tea and cake. We are working with people's minds. It's the most powerful, responsible role. It's the same as a surgeon.
It's an invisible scalpel.
Absolutely.
Every single one of us holds an invisible scalpel, whether we're a coach, whether we're a counsellor, whether we're a therapist. As soon as you start playing around with somebody's mind, the way they think, then you have got an invisible scalpel, and you can do damage very, very quickly. And it's why in the legal profession, they find it very hard to get a conviction against a professional therapist from a client making a complaint, because that professional knows exactly how to manipulate. And it's why we have to put a doorway through the brick wall that has been the psychological system.
Can I just say something though, just quick, something that Glenda said and something that Siobhan said as well, and we were all in agreement. I think it's a really powerful message on the back of what you're both saying. When she was talking about her work and her passion, I was actually enthralled by her speech and by her story. She kept saying, "My team." We talk about our different ideas, and that teamwork was very much like we tell each other, you know, what it is that we see, and that for me is what we're saying, isn't it? Not being scared to say what it is. Respectfully, like happens, you know, that we respectfully, but that ability for us to all talk and not to be kind of purists, you know, like I'm a purely this or I'm a purely that, but being open to being sort of critiqued, if you like, and not be coming back defensively and saying, well, no, you know, like, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. It all works. You know, it just all works. And if we just open up, and that, you know, Asa today and Glenda, I think that's really important, and you both just really reiterating that. I felt that that's such an important message.
And I think it all ties up with what Wendy said right at the very beginning of this afternoon. We have to be able to drift.
Yes.
We have to be able to accept that there are times when one mode of approach is not going to fit, and we have to be able to drift into something else because that's what the client needs. And I've done that in coaching, and Margaret has, and nobody does that in the therapy room. I know, Geoff, you do that. And it's something that when we see it play out in practice, we all experience the benefit from it. But our clients get that too, because they can see that we are adapting. And if we are the positive role model of that adaptation, that even we, as the person there to support, is able to adapt, then so can they. And that is one of the biggest comfort zones for any client. The adaptability is the key.
And the ironic thing is, 99.99, if not 100% of clients that sit in front of me have adapted 100 times over already, but they haven't appreciated and haven't been taught how they've done that, how they've got that, what it is in them that's allowed them to survive and get through that. And ultimately, they pretty much have already done exactly what we're trying to help them see that they've actually got. And that is, for me, is the power of therapy. When somebody comes into me, the first thing I think of is baseline. They're proactive because they picked up the phone. They're self-aware because they've recognised that they've got something that they want to resolve. They're motivated to want to make that appointment. And they're committed to change by physically coming into the room. Well, if that isn't a positive foundation for a house to stand strong, I don't know what is. So I tend to automatically bring those things up somewhere along the line of the therapeutic process to help them understand what I've seen just by them picking up the phone and booking in that appointment. We are helping them facilitate change within ourselves. And we have a duty to the rest of the world, therapeutic-wise, to show that we can take our change with our clients into our own therapeutic world and create a much better world for clients across the world. Now, I say this to David often. Sometimes I open my mouth and I say something and I go, are you mad? Are you mad to think what you're thinking? But you know what? A year down the line, I couldn't have imagined us standing in front of all you a year ago and hearing the things that are going to happen over the next year. I could not have physically believed that. And as Glenda said, it is up to us to believe. Believe as human beings we can do what we want to do if we can actually do it, if we can actually believe in that. Because we have the power over this. And as long as we've got the power over this, because this is the main thing we've got power of on this planet, we believe in this, we accept this, we process this, we work with this, you create a good life. And I am passionate, and I know you feel my passion, but I know everybody I connect with is passionate too. Every single one of you.
Yep.
And I'm damn glad that you're here to celebrate with us today. So, this is a milestone, isn't it?
It's phenomenal, and I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that's joined us today, everyone that's taken part in the event, everyone that's made this event possible. I also want to say, here is a chance for you. We have changed the way we do the refer a friend system for this year. So now, instead of you getting a cash gift or a token gift for referring a friend, you can earn your entire renewal membership. For each successful referral, that person will receive their first month's membership for free. But you, as the referring member, will get a month's free extension on your membership, up to 12 months. So you refer 12 people, you get your membership renewed for free. 6, you get 6 months. It's highly to how much you do. But the people you are referring will also get that an extra month's benefit. Okay.
I want to come in here. I want to say to David.
Oh, here we go.
You know where we are. You know what we've shared with you today. There is an opportunity for every single person you know to get involved if they want to and if they are the right individuals. We are having opportunities given to us. I don't want to sell you this membership, and I'm not going to. You either want to be involved in change, and I'll still love you even if you don't. But if you do, I'd love you to see and listen to what we've said today about the opportunities that are coming. Because those opportunities are absolutely mind-blowing opportunities. A blank scale of a country in relation to the mental health. This is an opportunity. Please know that this is one of the biggest opportunities you're probably ever going to get. So if you want to come on board, join us. If you don't, we'll still love you. Absolutely fine, not an issue. But think about it. Think about who you share it to. Think about what you tell somebody about APA. Because we want the best of the best. And you know what that means. That doesn't mean degrees. That means personality, training, passion, belief, and wanting the best for your clients. And I cannot say thank you enough for every one of you being here today. You all contribute something to me personally in whatever way. And I'm not going to go through everybody. You all know how you do that. But I do thank you, because if it wasn't for me getting through cancer, I wouldn't be standing here today. I wouldn't be here. And that was my self-awareness. And I can say that with a smile on my face because it saved my life, literally. So recognise what you've got. Recognise the power of who you are up here. And together we can change anything. Anything at all. And thank you.
I want to say a special thank you to Asa. Your words about APA and what APA brings are heartfelt and tremendously appreciated. Thank you so much.
You're certainly welcome.
I want to thank everyone that's got us here, everyone that has supported us, all of the organisations that are on our website as endorsers and collaborators. Thank you so much. We could not do all of what we are doing without you.
And we can put a pop-up because it is our birthday. And if we had one with you all, watch this disaster.
Here we go.
A very happy birthday to all of you, and thank you for celebrating it with us. We will see you again shortly. We will put up this and share it just so that you know. So don't be surprised when your pictures and your faces start appearing across every platform, because that's down to me. And if I had Angela's capability, Lord knows where it would be with IT. She's fab at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you both. And thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Have a lovely weekend.
Yeah, also thank you all. Excellent.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Lovely seeing everybody.
Nice to meet you all.
Nice
Thank
to
you,
see
guys.
people.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.